All right, here we go. I have a little bit of time, so I'm gonna monologue about some of my ideas and potentially open it up if people are around. So um, I saw yesterday that Michael Sartori of his handle's kind of tough. I mean, for people that are looking, because sometimes this is related. It's how to use YouTube though really well, which is kind of like how to leave better YouTube comments. MLTS, I think. 998. What is it? Now I can't even remember what it is. I put it in my post. There's a post on my channel. Yeah, MLTS 9984, I think, which is Sartori Studios. So he was doing a little bit of a follow-up stream or a continuing the discussion stream yesterday, which ended up being really good. I mean, I'm not actually all the way through it. Because it's long, whatever. I was listening to it some this morning because it's like 3.5 hours. But his monologue was really good. He said he was going to stop his monologue, and then he didn't, and he kept going till, I don't know, like 33 minutes or something. He did 20 minutes, and then he did like 33 minutes, and then Al Ohm came on, who, by the way, also has a channel where he's making some content. He has some shorts and different things. I just discovered that this morning. And so anyhow, this is his YouTube handle, Sartori's. So that's Sartori's. For whom all blessings flow said YouTube comments should never be more than 3 to 5 sentences. Depends. So this is where I'll get into my YouTube comment stuff. But anyhow, Sartori's stream yesterday was great. There's a lot of good stuff in it. He's talking about LARPing. In a way, and I put this as like a playful thing because he mentioned in the stream, but I think it's also nice to acknowledge these things. So Yoav, who's around the corner, I believe he's from Tel Aviv, so he's one of our Jewish contingent, although I don't know that he's practicing. He's very often in Jacob's corner of the corner of your own understanding. And hey, Sartori. And and Yoav said something that like Sartori is ahead of the curve, and he's he's saying things that people aren't ready to hear yet. And I think, there's levels to all this. I think all of us in the corner are doing that to some degree. We're all kind of forward-thinking people, which is probably why we have a hard time fitting in what I'm going to start. When I say institutional religion, I'm going to start because we're all religious, right? Rob Bell has a book, Life's Too Short to Pretend You're Not Spiritual, or no, Life's Too Short to Pretend You're Not Religious. I think that's his book. Or there's another book, David Dark, who my friend Rod Hare knows. Everything is Spiritual, I think is his book. But it's also really Vervaeke. I saw some posts from Vervaeke recently, maybe on X or something, about religio. Religio is just ligament. Religio, what binds, what holds together multiplicity. Everybody's religious. To have value and salience and vision and to act in the world, you have to have religion. Now, that there is a distinction between that kind of practical, obvious, necessary religion and institutional religion, or what I like to call now more industrial religion. Religion of the machine, religion of the scale, religion of system, religion of, Paul Kingsnorth, all that stuff. I said I was ahead of the curve, but you have said I was a genius for my wrestling gimmicks. Okay. Well, I don't know why he said you were a genius. He just did. Excuse my, I'm getting over a nasty cold. Industrial religion, yeah, Clara. Also good to see you. If I open this up, come on and play. But industrial religion is fundamentally identical replication. It's using primarily confessions, words, and I think it's necessarily connected to the medium of the written word. So books, Gutenberg Galaxy, the written word, and that medium, it's fish not knowing you're wet. You don't even realize you're in the medium because it's been so dominant for so long. But within that medium of institutional industrial religion, that makes identical replicants. And this is why if you're a little bit outside of the identical replicant form, you get ostracized or you get kicked out or you don't fit or it doesn't work. Hence the motley crew of the TLC that is playing in a new medium. Because guess what? We don't have institutional industrial control yet in this medium. Some people want to do it. Some people want to enact it. Some people want to do this top-down emanation control over the medium so that we can use it, right? We have goals. We need an explicit, stated, controllable telos that we move toward. I'm all about a mystical telos. I was talking to a signal group this morning, and I was, so this will fill on part of my thing. I was talking about humor and humility and maybe how those two things are intrinsically tied because, like, what jokes are on the table and what jokes are not or here, this is Sartori's thing. And what jokes can you say? What jokes can't you say? Part of that, there can be some preferences, like there's certain jokes that that are hard for me. Like I would say, depending, like abortion jokes, I can't really do because it's really serious for me. And I just, for whatever reason, there's some of them that just, I can tolerate some of them. There's some dark humor. Like I like Anthony Jeselnik, some of his comedy specials, at least some of them. The one that's the best is Thoughts and Prayers. That comedy special is just one of my faves. But Jeselnik has a lot of off-color, I guess, comedy. And some of it's pretty rough for people. I get that as a temperamental thing. But if you have like sacrosanct, unquestioned, like you cannot joke about these things, I think that's something that's sacrosanct. I think that's, I don't know. It's there's a time and a place, but I think it also can manifest a kind of implicit industrial religion at play, controlling language. And there are places for that. Like maybe you should do that to some degree within church. When and where, those are bigger questions. But I was watching a video from Legion of Skanks, who are very, as you can tell by their name, they're very crass, and I would say, and they don't hold they hold comedic expression to be sacrosanct and in an absolute free speech kind of a way. And they were making fun of Dave Portnoy because he recently had some clip that went quasi-viral about yelling at his employees and getting into disagreement with one of his employees about whether or not you can joke about, Jewish stuff and making inappropriate Jew jokes, and there are certain Jews and Jewish people and pro-Jewish people who are completely fine with it. Like I think of Ari Shafir or something, whose grandfather, I believe, was in like one of the hell's the word for it? See, I've been so brainwashed, I can't even remember the word. What's the word? Tell me. In one of the debate Jay Dyer. I'm not a debater, man. No, thank you. And I'm sure he would destroy me in a debate. It would be, if I debated Jay Dyer, quick aside, it would mainly be a test for my own self-control in not getting emotionally dysregulated. Thank you that it's a joke. What are the camps? What are the camps where they sent the Jews? What are they called? Concentration camps? Yeah. So Ari Shafir's grandfather, I think, was in a concentration camp, and he makes Holocaust jokes. It's whether or not you think it's okay, he clearly thinks it's okay. A joke about leaving better YouTube comments. Yeah. So yeah, let's get back to it. Let's get back to YouTube or comedy. No, let's finish the comedy bit. I'll fulfill on that. I'll circle back to YouTube comments. This is my mosaic. I'm working around it. I'm circumambulating. I circle things. the mystical center. I'm like a Taurus with a cold. So is humor, that was one of the questions I had. Within humor, is there an intrinsic humility where you are open? Because if you're gonna, even if you're unconsciously, not within your conscious awareness, you laugh at a joke, that means there's some sort of tacit, hidden wholeness, maybe you could say. Divine Sophia, Thomas Merton, I mentioned that the other day. Within you that is open to seeing the levity, the humor, the lightness. That's, the polar opposite, that's part of the what does Tom Berg call them? The antinomies that hold being together. The non-duality that includes duality, the hidden wholeness. So maybe there's an antimony in comedy where like you can take a very serious topic and you can not take yourself too seriously and be open to seeing things that you didn't previously see. And I think that's the power of edgy comedy. I really do think it's the power. So, all right, that's the comedy bit. How to leave better YouTube comments. So I've had this evolution in myself. I mean, people are free to disagree, and they will. I've always liked leaving timestamp comments because I think it's a very helpful way to index and hyperlink this new emergent technology. So there's a YouTube, there's a live stream. There's a YouTube live stream. If somebody leaves comments on this live stream, for example, like, number one, I think affirmation is nice. If they're just like, good work, keep going. Okay. It's not, I mean, it's useful in the sense that it's an affirmation, but also, unless I really know you, like, unless I have an ongoing relationship with you, like, let's say RJ, I mean, everybody who's in here so far in the comments, like Clara, Sartori, Michael, Nathan, RJ, if any of you guys left comments, like, I know you to various degrees, and I would say, oh, that's nice. Like, they have context with me. It's not just like an empty nothing. And so that's fine. But then if you're wanting to make the information therein or the substance within these ongoing conversations more easily navigable, more easily to be navigated. Yeah, I also like to know who's watching too. Then you can then they can know where that subject is. I used to leave timestamp comments, and then I would just leave my thoughts about what was discussed there. And now my next evolution of leaving comments, so this is part of my advice, is leave a timestamp, leave the substance of what's being discussed, a topic, a summary of whatever is being discussed at the timestamp, maybe even the person's involved. So like I left a couple comments on Sartori's video this morning with Al Ohm, who came in, and I said, okay, like this is what they were talking about this time. This is when Al came in. This is what they were saying, and then this is what I'm adding to it. And maybe even links and references, and as much as you can. I think you can only link within to other YouTube things, but it's helpful. And in that sense, I don't know anything about this Palantir stuff, but isn't that's Teal's thing? But then that allows other people to use that and navigate that and see, because like if I see someone I know who's left a timestamp comment about a subject, boom. Because here's the thing, as more people are making content, like Al Ohm is now making content, like I said, you can't watch everything. Salience, hierarchies, bind and blind. There's only so much you can give attention to. There's only so much time in the day. Everyone's going to have different preferences, and so everyone's going to pay attention to different things. So if we want to manifest non-industrial religio in this medium, that's an easier way to do it, because then people can go in and at their own preference and in their own time, they can look at a video, they can see, and I don't know, YouTube is at some point I would think they're going to integrate this stuff and make it more, like, I don't know if they'll use AI at some point to build in what they consider to be natural bookmarks, because you can do that now as a producer. I don't do that because it's too much work and I'm lazy, and I'm not lazy. I just don't have time for it. I don't value it enough. I don't value this enough to heavily curate my content, because that's not what I'm doing. I really am trying to create a hospitable place for people to know and be known, in which we talk about ideas. But as Nathan said in the last live stream that I jumped in, or as I said to him, this isn't mainly about ideas for me. It's mainly about persons. So the ideas are fine, but I'm not trying to create an information economy. I'm trying to create a relational economy. And the ideas are periphery, which is contra to Christian YouTube, Also why I don't want to debate Jay Dyer, because he's not trying to create a relationship really with people he's debating. He's trying to win with facts and logic, which is the nature of debate, which is fine, I guess, if you want to do it. Just know what it is. So, I'm in basic training, yeah. You miss my mustache? Or Ron's mustache? I've had different versions of a mustache, too. Chad played a clip of me the other day when I had the really long mustache. Like, it was long and big, and I had long, disheveled hair. I looked like a hobo. Yeah. It was great. Or a 1970s cop. I agree. Christian YouTube is very boring. So those are some of my ideas about how to leave better comments. If you guys have other ideas about how to leave better comments, that's the way it is. Because this is one of the big things that the TLC of Your Own Understanding has I think really been trailblazing. And we're using YouTube as social media. It always was a social media platform, but people just mainly took it as like new media, content, information, or just consumerism. TLC and breaking the fourth wall and the randos and everything that's happened post PBK and the Jordan Peterson phenomenon is us getting to know each other. We've used it to relationally connect. Yeah. Let the atheists and Jews and Muslims make friends too. Yeah. Well, listen, this is what I was saying to Rod and Ken and Chris this morning. Is I was saying that's part of what I think that's part of what I'm trying to do is in my non-industrial religio. I'm trying to create a space where it's the non-duality that includes duality, where like I am a self-professing, and as much as I have accurate self-awareness, self-identifying Christian who has converted to Eastern Orthodoxy. So and I'm within the OCA, the Orthodox Church of America. These are all my narrow identitarian labels. But I'm trying to create a space with people outside of that, within the intra-Christian realm, Catholics, Lutherans, Methodists, Church of Christ, Episcopalians, mega churches, all those different people that are in the TLC, but also Jewish people, some Orthodox Jewish people. I don't think we have any Hasidic Jewish people. I don't know that we have Reformed. RJ, I don't believe. Do we have some LDS people like Adam's Fall, this new channel, who I know watches my channel, watches Sam's channel a lot. He's an LDS person. Tyler, brilliant. He's around, I think. I haven't seen him around in a while. Tyler, what's Tyler's last name? It was probably not that. I know I have it somewhere because I have his personal contact information, but can't remember his name. Long hair, Tyler, brilliant. Probably intellectually one of the smartest people I've ever met. That Tyler. LDS, at least grew up LDS. So we're open to these things. We have recovering Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't know if we have any practicing Jehovah's Witnesses. We got some Oriental Orthodox. I don't know. Do we have especially in Jacob's Corner, there are some discussions with Muslim people, but I don't know that we have any active Muslim people. I know we have some Buddhist people, like California Buddhists. I don't know that we have any like cultural, like native to their national ethnic religion, Hindu or Buddhist people. We've got some former Hare Krishnas, but there's not a strong Islamic contingency. And we, of course, have our atheists, they don't overly participate a lot. We have a lot of what I would call like non-theist, agnostic, Tom Holland Christian atheists. I would say there's a significant section of those people, but there's not a lot of people who are like ideological atheists that practice in the corner because they're ideologues and they're within their own industrial religion of atheism and they don't really get it. So Sartori's a squishy evangelical. Not with those forearms, buddy. You're not squishy. Invite some Muslim people. I would love to invite them, although they're not. Here's a question I have for you, RJ. Do you know of some Muslim people who? Well, I know there's a guy. What's the guy's name? Who's often on Jacob's channel, who tends to be really, kind of, for lack of a better term, ecumenical, kumbaya. But like they can get into some heated debates. What is his name? I can't remember. Anyhow, I would love for more of those people to be in the TLC. The problem is that I don't know if there are parallel communities to TLC because TLC is predominantly Christian. Kezi's trying to do this obviously in Judaism, and to some degree Jacob, and with the Noahide movement. But like the Noahide movement is kind of, I'm not going to say it's industrial, but it's not. There's a goal, obviously, within being Noahide. There's a goal in converting and colonizing a little bit. That's not what I'm trying to do, Yes, Nathan, thank you. Dr. Khalil Andani. Yes, that's correct. That's what I was thinking of. Appreciate it. Yeah, Fawad's on there too, I guess sometimes. So Jacob gets some of those guys, but they're not participating in this realm because it's probably too, and I get it's probably just too Christian. Like we'd have to go more the AA route, the God of your own understanding. So, all right, I'm going to talk about books and new media, and I'm just going to bring up Kale's tweet. I've been treating Kale lately. Did he reply? He has not replied. So let's look at, what did I put? I'm going to share this screen, and we're going to talk about it a little bit, and then I'll open it up for a little while. Let's go. Kale Zeldin. All right, zooming in. He said, or was this working? Yeah. He said, I suspect you may have a secret. You are not as well read as you'd like. There are books you've always wanted to read, books you suspect are important and revelatory, yet you've not tackled them. We all feel this way, but it's never too late. Take and read. Okay, I agree. Also, I think hidden within this statement is an implicit allegiance to the medium of the written word. Now, that's not an inherently bad thing. However, if within your implicit allegiance to the written word, you have an unknown sacrosanct fidelity to the written word as the best, or what people should be doing, or as what should be preeminent and dominant and the main thing, to me, I think that's a form of bigotry. Now, I know that's very like Protestant evangelical progressive of me, but I think it's true. Conservatives aren't going to like this take. People that are temperamentally conservative, because we've been living in the Gutenberg galaxy for 500 plus years. And we've been living under the dominance of the written word for probably longer than that. I mean, clearly it happened at Gutenberg, but around the time of Gutenberg, everything was still predominantly oral, and there was a little bit of writing. But until the proliferation of books and until the cost was broke down, like who said this the other day? Something like somebody was talking about what it would have cost to write a book at some point, and it's ridiculous. But like now, I was just repairing this book. So my son took this book and destroyed it. Graham Greene, one of my favorite authors, The End of the Affair, Great book. Not as I think his magnum opus, even according to him, is The Power and the Glory, one of my favorite books of all time. But my son just jacked up the cover on it, which I don't like. But like this book, okay, let's see. What did it cost? So someone bought it used at some point for $6.95. What was the initial cost? Where does it have the price in these old books? This book was printed in 77, I think. What was the price? So like books approximately at the time were like $6, $7, $8. What's a new book now? 20 to 30 maybe? And they'd probably be more than that if they were better quality books, but part of that is supply and demand. People aren't reading books anymore, right? Really. So I said this about books, back to the kale thing. So all that Gutenberg Galaxy cost, whatever, but like, don't absolutize that. This is like zoom out. Within the grand scheme of history, the written word potentially is a microcosm. Now, I'm not saying books are going away. I'm not saying books aren't valuable. I'm not saying that medium has nothing to give you, because all there are no solutions, there are trade-offs. In the medium of the written word, Christ will be manifest, because the word of God, very God, wills always and in all things to manifest the mystery of his incarnation. St. Maximus, Jordan Daniel Wood, whole mystery of Christ. I think the Logos, divine sparks, manifest everywhere, to bridge, to use Chezi's language. So it's going to happen in books, but there's going to be strengths and weaknesses to it. Books are slow. Books are also to get a book printed among a reputable publisher, it's very difficult. And that's maybe good in a way. It's a winnowing process. It filters, right? That in a sense, that's a good thing. However, it also is going to be naturally limiting and inhibiting certain things, and there's going to be pearls that are lost before the swine of the publishers, because they don't see what they can see. And I would argue, in the age of capitalism, and we're in the age of global capitalism, they only want what sells. I mean, are there publishing companies out there that I'm going to get to this too. I'm going to get to this, Matt. I already had this in mind. Self-publishing, because we're in the age of self-publishing. So like they want to sell stuff. They want capital, money. I want money. It's what I want. I'm trying to think of what that song is. They have investments. They're not going to give an author money. They're not going to invest a bunch of money in printing things if they don't have proof of concept, if they don't know that it's going to sell and be valuable. This gets into a big question of like value and money, and there's a lot in that. Makes me think of our resident economist. Why am I blanking on your name? I hate it when I can't remember names. He's not high enough in my salience. I can picture your face. I'm going to find it because I need to. Marcus Shera, Dr. Marcus Shera, our resident economist. Somebody else was just talking to me about economics the other day too, and value. Maybe it was Alom. I can't remember. But now we have self-publishing, right? Michael Sartori did it. Matt published. That's great. That's fantastic. You can publish on your own. You don't need a publishing company. But then you also don't get the benefit of the reputation of the publishing company. You can't like look inside the book and like, what are major publishing companies? Like this one is Penguin Books, big publishing company. If you have a book that comes out in Penguin, that says something. Now, what does it say? You could just take it as gospel that like, oh, you have a book published in Penguin, it's good. Is that true? No, not necessarily, right? Exceptions and rules. So this is another book, Cormac McCarthy, my favorite author. This is another book that my son has taken and used. What is his publishing company? What? Modern Library? Random House. Work was originally published by Random House, right? In 85. So now if you self-publish, I guess that's really the age of authenticity, right? And capitalism. Under what credibility or authority are you publishing? Your own, right? I mean, that's the point of self-publishing. If you had the option of, for all those people out there who are self-publishing, if you could have gotten a deal with Random House or whatever, Penguin, would you have? Probably, because it's a bigger market, right? Anyhow, zoom way out. That's a super sub conversation, subcategory talk. The written word, I would say it's waning in the era of long form podcasting, YouTube, social media, and technology. This is the emergent media. Is it going to overtake the written word? Hell if I know. I don't. Unless we have like a solar flare and global collapse and technological collapse, I would say this is going to continue to increase. AI, augmented reality, whatever. Exactly, Grim. No one cares who publishes because so few read. Yeah, now, but nobody also cares if you self-publish. Because then if you self-publish, like Michael, who's often plugging his book, you have to rely on some then unrecognized emergent body of influence that you can promulgate your book. Grassroots. People that you know. Matt used to have a reputable publisher and he broke contract. Oh, you saucy minx. Yeah, and younger people. I mean, Zoomers. I don't know. Okay, back to Kale. Let's go to Kale and let's open this up. So that's a little bit about Medium. Yeah, and publishers are becoming consolidated because of capitalism, of course. Just capital. I mean, here's the pattern, right? Buying out, consolidating, so that it's all into just like a capitalistic monopoly. It's not like a forced top. It's a chosen monopoly of like, I think this is totally in line with Adam Smith and like the kind of democratic capitalistic stuff is like it's Aldous Huxley. We are moving towards monopolies of our own choosing, Anyhow, that's a different topic. Okay, we're going back here. So I said the future. I suspect people are not as well YouTubed as they'd like. There are YouTube videos you've always wanted to participate with and that you suspect are important and revelatory, yet you've not tackled them. My kind of cheeky thing that I'm doing with Kale there is saying it's just a medium. It really is just a medium. Books aren't sacred any more so than YouTube videos are sacred. They have been around longer. They are more time tested. We have classics. We are, so like there is something to that. I'm not saying that's nothing. Like these books have greater recognition than I don't know, than my buddy Jason's self-published book that he sent me, which I don't have around here somewhere. What's the title of it? I don't think Jason is around. And that's fine. That's all something. But are there classic YouTube videos? I have certain videos and podcasts that are classic in my sense that I often go back to, that I reference a lot. And that's going to happen over time too. Hierarchies will emerge. I don't know. I try to be open to industrial religion. I really try to. And like, is industrial religion and are industrial religions going to emerge in the internet, in the TLC? Perhaps. I pray that they don't, because I hate them. I hate industrial religion in Christianity, and I hate industrial religion and industrial capitalism in the world. I hate the depersonalized inhumane aspects of any industrial process just grinds my gears. That was good wordplay. Okay, I'm going to just notice the things you say when you don't even say it. Like, I was aware of that, but like, notice how much we've been colonized by industrialism. People talk about themselves as machines. Like listen to the metaphors we use. It's whatever. Okay, I'm gonna post the link. I will commit to staying for a half hour. That's what I'm committing to. I'm gonna go. People can come in and play. I'm gonna pin it, as is my pattern, and then I'm gonna go do other things. You know. And there I am talking. No, I don't. I don't want to copy the link. You know the phenomenon when you go like, okay, here, stop it. When like you have this and you have the thing that's there, but it's so big, and I'm like, where does my big thumb click on it where it doesn't like think I'm trying to click the link and I'm just trying to pin the thing? It's whatever. It's complicated. Got it done. I kind of blew it for a while. Okay, I'm gonna go back. Thank you, Pickens. Pick and choose. See, like even right now, like I know your handle, I know your avatar, I know I've talked with you, but only a couple times on stream, and now I'm trying to think, like, what is your actual name? I feel like it starts with a J. This is a good question. Who talks about themselves as machines? Yeah, that's probably true. We only use machine metaphors when we're talking metaphorically or abstractly or generally. I don't think of myself as a machine, except like when I'm doing reps, I'm a machine. You know, Matt C knows what I'm talking about, doing reps like a machine. What up, buddy?
You triggered the publishers in your chat.
Did I? Are there publishers in my chat?
Yeah, me and Michael Sartori.
Well,
and soon you. If we could reform you enough to self-publish.
To self-publish, yeah. People have told me I suck at writing. See, here's the problem. I'm not like my son. All my kids, I don't know why. They're like my son is particularly a better writer than me. Fiction, like he just. I think it's because we limited them from screens so much. They read so much when they were young, which I didn't really. That it just, and part of it's probably natural. It just comes out of him. Like he'll just start writing a short story, first blush, and I'll just read like a page of what he's written, and I'm like, I couldn't write that if I tried for a year. You know, it's kind of unbelievable. So tell me about your publishing frustrations with what I said.
Well, I think folks in this quarter largely are going to agree with you. I think that you did a little bit of. I think you said something you don't quite believe in order to strengthen your argument. Okay. I don't think you believe that publishers have clout. And I think Sartori and I, the reason we self-publish is because we're not looking for a trad pub, christening. We don't need to be baptized by clout and have economic permission to publish. You know, we can be a publisher and a producer, and you can too.
Is that your
that means to your argument is all I mean. That's us agreeing with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I acknowledge that and I can see that, but part of that to me seems to be, and tell me if I'm wrong, but with you and Sartori and you obviously you voluntarily dropped a publisher, right?
Yeah.
So like that's a volitional choice on your part. So like you had one. I think there's probably a couple categories of people. There's probably people who would love to get published by a publisher with clout, but can't get it. So then they self-publish and they're like, look at me, I'm independent. I'm going my own way. You know, that kind of thing. But then there's also people who I think either with proper conviction and maybe idealism, they're just like, nope, I'm going to self-publish. By the way, your thing keeps like every 5 seconds, I get like a spinny circle and a black screen. It's not enough to really interrupt what you're saying, but like it'll cut out for a half a second. It just didn't.
I'll turn off a couple things.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah,
Ooh,
maybe I'm
good
just
question.
assuming Sartori's, he's so bleeding edge. I just assume he's bleeding edge on everything. Maybe
Sartori's great, you know. Yoav said that.
well,
He's a genius. Here's what Jeff says.
yeah.
Is YouTube live streaming and video uploads not self-publishing?
That's to your point, right? I would agree with that, and that fits with your model that you're describing.
Right. And part of it to me is like, to me, this is, will I ever write something? I don't know, maybe. I don't think it's particularly my gifting. I don't even know if this is particularly my gifting either. Hey, Clara. People every once, every once in a while, people will say I'm somewhat good at this, whatever the hell that means. Maybe it's me that keeps I'll close all my stuff. Maybe that's my problem. Maybe it's me that's cutting out because I think Claire's just did it.
Claire, do you see us? Are we popping it out?
I see both of them.
Yeah.
Maybe it's all my stuff. Okay. So I mean, to me, this is what I'm doing here is self-publishing. I'm getting a lot of my ideas out there. And yes, I mean, one of the I've had multiple friends in my life say that I should write something. Again, like, I don't think I'm good at it. But like, even with this, could I and will I over time, almost kind of like Rogan. I'll use the Rogan analogy. It's like a lot of people will say he's one of the best interviewers in the world and long form podcasts. Like, he's kind of the godfather of it. He didn't get there overnight. He learned slowly by just like winging it and practicing. And then he got particularly good at it because he was interested in things. Will that happen with people? Like, if I just continue live streaming for, let's say, 10 years, I'm probably going to be way better at it than I am right now. And that's a kind of publishing, right? I mean, I don't know.
So okay, so agreeing with you and thinking about the trade-offs with any mediated means of communication. There were trade-offs with the Gutenberg revolution, which you articulated really well. There's trade-offs with this transition to this medium. And so long as we're like clear-eyed about what we're setting down and what we're picking up with that trade-off, then I think we'll continue to do this healthily, But there are trade-offs in terms of our attention span, right? We're all like type 2 ADHD right now, thanks to this medium. We can't, if we forget something, we don't go and re-find it. If it's on my bookshelf, I can be, my grandchildren can find it 20 years after I'm gone and discover my thoughts. They're not going to discover this, especially after the, solar flare. So that's a trade-off, but that doesn't mean that this is a bad medium. Obviously we're embracing this because this is, we like new media. We're okay with not clearly defined borders and tracks, right, Clara? Like we enjoy this emergent reality that we're discovering. And we like what we're picking up that books don't give us here.
Sure.
Yeah, she is good signal.
But the question I have is if we go this way, can you all hear me? If we go this way, if we move in this direction and we're all self-published and we don't have any industrial thing, like how do we have culture in common? How do we have a conversation where we're all just, on the same page? That's kind of what I wonder.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give you the full screen, but I'm not as good at this because you have shades. And McMosaf says he got the idea of you of going full screen with shades. Because on McMo's streams, if you come in with the shades, looking awesome with a hoodie.
Oh my gosh, she's got the mic too.
Oh my goodness.
McMo, did you steal that as well? Claire was the
McMo has no original ideas. He's a total leech.
Oh no.
No, I'm just kidding. I actually think McMo's really good at this too. And then I was even thinking like Sartori. So I started talking about Sartori and his stream that he did after mine yesterday. Al Ohm came on. They were chatting. Seabax came in. And I was thinking, like, Sartori just riffed for like a half hour. And I was like, this is good. Like, this is a good monologue. And I was like, that's great. Not that everybody has to do this format that I do, but like, I do think this is like the vanguard and cutting edge of media. And I think we're like playing with stuff that's fun and it feels cool. And if it never and here's the thing, I'm not a capitalist. So I don't give a shit if this ever makes money. That's not why I'm here. And I mean that genuinely. Most people say that and I think they're bullshitting. If I could make money from YouTube, I wouldn't. I'm serious. And prove me wrong. Pay me. Give me tons of money and I will give it away. I'm not going to make money from YouTube. I won't do it. I was actually thinking the other day, if somebody wants to donate to me and support me, give it to Grail Country because I'm using Nate's StreamYard. Give it to Nate. That's what I want.
Yeah. Well, that's because you live in a mansion,
That's
and
true.
you have the private jet, and I mean, flying around in the PJs, and you're
The
like,
PJ.
yeah. So it's a lot
True.
easier.
Facts.
Yeah. I guess one thing I jumped on to get in is like I think that like so much of communication in the past has been limited. And like guess what? If you wanted to talk to someone who was far away, what are you gonna do? Nothing. You
Right.
write a letter at best, and that's if you have a mail system. And a lot of people
Right.
don't. And you're like, okay, this could arrive in a month, 6 months, year, never get there. So it's like, yeah, I think that there's a lot of advantages to like they're no longer being gatekeepers. And I think that the further this goes along, the more we realize things have been gatekept. I mean, my dad was definitely like a believer in like he would read multiple newspapers, so he'd be like, "Oh, well, I have all the perspectives because I read a lot of newspapers," and it's just like, of course, I'm not one of the closed-minded people who only reads this paper or that paper. I read all, and I'm like, but like to me, I'm like, oh yeah, but like there's so many biases, even if you read every single newspaper published in America, like that the medium of newspaper is going to have its biases inherently. So it's like we're seeing the edges of all these mediums, and I'm not saying this medium won't have its own problems, but it's like,
Yeah, where are the biases with this medium? That's an interesting perspective.
yeah, well, guys who are super handsome and have really good presence, like Luke, will rise to the top and have like money and try, so that's probably a big bias right there.
People who just do a ton of work in production and clips and thumbnails, like my thumbnail game, the best. See, I don't like even this. Good Stuff Ninja said, I think of this as interacting, not publishing. I think publishing more is about long-term time reach. But that's just because we see that retrospectively because of Gutenberg and what happened. That's not true. Like the only books that we have are the books that didn't get burned or that got to be really popular for whatever reason. And we probably can't even know the selective hierarchies of why that happened. They're lost to us. That is gone.
Yeah. But I just think they're going to be, this is one thing with new technology that kind of frustrates me when people talk about it is like, there's going to be good and bad, but we can also lock in the good and like move away from the bad. That's one thing that like people don't talk enough about. Of like, yeah, there probably will be like weird disjunctures where they're bad, like, oh, there's this bad thing that happens. But if you have wisdom, you could be like, oh, I fell in this rabbit hole and all I did was listen to this one YouTube guy. Then I realized he was a total fraud. Yeah, but now you can like have the antibodies to be like, oh, I'm not going to do that again. And you can still be thankful, like, oh, I can see so many perspectives and I'm glad YouTube exists. You don't have to be like, nope, like just there should be 8 newspapers in America and you pick one of them that's distributed in your town and, that's it. And you see a lot of like, I mean, you see it in comedy, but you see it especially in writing. Like they just pick a guy to be like, this is the witty guy who says funny things, or is, like, oh, H.L. Mencken, he was such a wit, and like, he's so funny, and we used to write for the Baltimore Sun, and it's like, yeah, he's not the smartest, funniest guy in the universe.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to mute you, Denise, for a second, just because you had feedback. Close your YouTube. Go, Alan.
Yeah. So yeah, just like we look back and we say like, oh, the good days of Lenny Bruce and blah blah blah. It's like, well, those are the only people who had a platform. Those are the only people who could speak. So, and now honestly being more localized and having like more like, okay, I'm the funny guy in this group of 200 people, or like I'm going to be this role. I think that's better. It's like, it's better to have more ability to communicate with your chosen group of like people that you identify with. And And then people are gonna be like, no, localism, you can only be friends with the people who are 5 feet away from you. And then that's gonna be another fight. But
Yeah, I think that would be so. I'm gonna I'm gonna pop out and close my thing and come back. It won't end the stream, but I want to say that I think choice, extreme choice, is the strength and the weakness, to Alan's point, of this group. Because through technology, we can do that. We can select our groups completely individually. I'll be right back.
Yeah, maybe to Clara's idea, maybe this idea of, because this is a platform, not a publisher, famously, right? So in this world of like platform mediation, there's no filtering process for quality, which is something that we took for granted. Now we think of as a strength because diversity is our strength. because we have all these, we can make all this unwatchable content as long as we want. but in the past, that did kind of get us, the canon for TradPub lit.
Yeah.
And we're going to be canonless now, I think, with this, or everyone will have their own canon, which is about the same thing.
But I don't think people really want that. Like, if there was a service that was like, I'm going to curate 8 YouTube videos for you a day and you can't watch anything else, who's going to sign up for that? Like, everyone talks about, like, oh, I wish it was this way. It's like, yeah,
You're
I
right.
don't want, if they say, okay, we're going to send you a USB thumb drive every day and that's all your media for the day. It's like,
Good point.
No one wants that. So, and it is curated because it's what people show up to. Like, I show up, I like this stuff, and I like showing up here, and I like seeing these people. So, there's a viral Mr. Beast clip that doesn't show up in my feed because I've told YouTube I don't care about Mr. Beast, I care about this, and so that is curation. And then for some people, they'd be like, I would hate this, and I want the Mr. Beast clip, and that's curation.
You're right. There is curation. It's we're the curators now rather than the publisher, which is a pretty radical change.
I figured I would come in so I could explain my thinking behind why I wrote and self-published.
You got to.
So it's because I was so ahead of the curve that I anticipated a time when the traditional college system would become obsolete and it would be replaced by alternative forms of education and training. So I didn't go to college, and I went to a ministry training program, which was perfectly acceptable to the local church that I had gone to since high school, where the people knew me and they were willing to hire me. But then I found out that when you move to a new state, you need credentials or a resume or something to get a job. And I have a GED, and that's not that much. So I wrote the book. It's something as that I can point to as an accomplishment. I think that its size is actually somewhat of a challenge. It's like when Jesus said to the Pharisees, when they asked him where he got his authority, and then he asked them where John the Baptist got his, and it's I can point to that and be like, have you read the book? And if they want to pretend like they did, then they're going to have to just go with whatever I say because no one's actually going to read it. So it's like a way to bluff. But if people do read it, then and they like it, then that's someone that I can be friends with. So it's like my brain, disembodied.
That's a different definition of a book now for this new meta-modern age. That's really interesting.
Denise, what do you think? Oh, I'll unmute you. Okay, now we can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got a couple things. Briefly, just to kind of put a background on what I'm thinking, I feel as though the present internet kind of interactions that are going on are putting us in a mindset without us understanding it that's more similar to the pre-Pauline Christian. And the reason I'm saying pre-Pauline and not pre-Gutenberg is because a lot of people don't realize this, and I'm not sure how true it is. It's one of those things that, oh, I saw it on the internet, so it must be true, which was that Paul made a technological difference when he was doing his ministry with the epistles. He actually stopped using scrolls and started using the codex. And they don't really say where the codex, the pages you can flip through came from. But that is what gave the debate style of Christianity that we identify with Paul more than with Jesus. Jesus was more similar to the guru style of Christianity or spirituality. And Paul started walking around with a codex, which enabled him to win arguments. And of course, that becomes more extreme in the modern day. But I grew up in a very different culture. In fact, when I listen to Luke, I'm reminded of the culture shock I got when I left the actual cult in which I grew up. And when my only thought upon reaching age 18 was, get out of here. My mother wanted me to go to a college where I could commute. And I quickly picked the furthest college I could get, which was a very radical left-wing public college. And so then I went and had all kinds of culture shock. And one of the things that Luke reminds me of is it was my first time interacting with Bourbonites, because I grew up in, as I say, a cult-like environment. I did not know, and I'm serious about this, I did not know until I was 12 years old that they let Protestant into the country. I mean, you may have a hard time wrapping your head around that because you all think, and I know you're right, that the American culture is largely a Christian Protestant style of culture. But in the ethnic Catholic world that I grew up in, which was pre-Vatican II, which maintained the Latiness until practically the very end when our parish was pretty much wiped out in the 70s and 80s. But we held on to it. That involved not just the question of the Latin liturgy. It involved the entire social construct of the family clan structures, which we had in my town. We had my parish, which was the French. We had an Irish parish, and a Polish parish, and the Puerto Ricans were the Hispanics of the day on the East Coast. They held their own parishes within, they were kind of, and there were others coming in, Czechoslovakian immigrants coming in, who would hold services within the other churches while they tried to gather the money to form their own ethnic parish. The result was that we had our own school system, we had our own languages, we had half day, and all the schools did this, half day in our language, except the Irish, they speak English. But we had half day in our own language and a half day in English. And in my family, some members never left the Catholic world at all. They stayed with the Novus Ordo and went from Catholic parochial to Catholic high school to Catholic college to working in that culture. And I left. I headed for the other side of the country after a while. So I understand the two cultures. But what hit me about meeting suburbanites was I still can't really define it, but there's a different awareness of the world. Maybe the cult-like environment I grew up in gave me awareness that our world was separate. Also, our parochial system, I realize now what we were taught to do was basically the same as being in a medieval monastery, because we learned to write while listening to dictatorship. We took dictatorship, which meant the whole class from about second grade on would be writing from somebody reading at the front of the class because we were learning to listen, write what we could hear. We learned to write in script. That was very important from the very beginning. And I didn't know that was normal until one of my sisters put her son in public school and was told that it was wrong. We made sure our kids could read before they got to kindergarten because the nuns expected that you can read your alphabet and you know how to write your name when you arrive in kindergarten. That's not done in the American public school system. My cousin went, his mother took him out of the parochial and put him in public school and discovered that he was not allowed to write in script. He was told to stop printing. And we never printed in school. So we were actually learning how to be monks in a monastery writing script in the old style that predated Gutenberg. You know, now you get to Gutenberg, or then you get to Gutenberg and you got the Reformation, which everyone argues about it theologically. You know, get rid of Mary, get rid of this, get rid of all the pomp and circumstance of the Catholic liturgy. But it's nothing about that. It's about switching from a right brain worship culture. I think we should call it worship culture, right brain worship culture, to left brain worship, which became not worship but argument. And then Paul's use of the Codex became amplified by the existence of the Gutenberg Bible, or the print process. And the Protestant Reformation theology is highly one of the characteristics of Protestantism, in my experience, comparing it to my Catholic upbringing, is the extreme reliance on verbal logic. Then you come into the modern age, we got the televangelism, and we got to look at Marshall McLuhan to figure out what went wrong there. And we got the nutcases with the that look like demons doing voodoo dances and calling it a Pentecostal thing, and it's got nothing to do with Pentecost in the Bible. That was a return to right brain, but right brain with no left brain logical controls at all. And now we're going through this period of taking all this stuff and putting it back together. And I do believe we are returning to the pre-Pauline, more guru-like, not guru in the sense of finding individual, cult leaders, but guru in the sense of getting a personal inspiration from our teacher, which is Jesus. And the difference being, of course, we identify Jesus as who he is and not with some modern human being, unless you join some weird little group. Anyway, that's what I had to say.
So, sorry, Denise, yes. I thought the whole time I just kind of thought I heard you saying like, oh, you were in this isolated group, and then maybe making that comparison to this quarter of the internet, or to people being in their own little microcosm of choosing their own content, because if you're isolated, how do you understand the outside world out there? But then we got on the left brain and the right brain, and I lost the plot.
Hey, quick admin thing, Denise. I think a lot of what you're saying was great. However, maybe if you turn off Grim said, maybe if you turn off your video, we could just hear you better, because your audio is cutting in and out a little bit. And I think it's unfortunate, because that was all really good and clippable. Like it was a great little spiel you were saying, but it was a little difficult to listen to. So maybe if you just turn off your video, we would be able to hear you better. Because I don't know if you have low bandwidth, or try popping out and coming back in, restarting your web browser. Maybe that would work too.
Here, as I should have a turn camera off, but I can't see where it is.
Should they stop cam at the bottom center?
Should they stop? I got it.
Yeah, and then make sure you have close other tabs or browsers if you have them, because that would maybe help too.
I thought I did that.
Okay. There, I feel.
Let me just.
I don't hear you cutting out now.
Well, I'm on an Android, so it's hard for me to do the closing window thing. But am I
Yeah.
coming through okay now?
I don't hear nearly as many
It might be the bandwidth.
blips.
That's
This
all it
thing
was,
is not always the best.
especially on phones.
Yeah, well, this
And
is
so,
on one of those Android tablets, which is about.
and so Anselman is a lot of what you were saying. I figured would trigger Anselman. He said the word incarnate says as it is written. However, what CW Weeks has some little quip where he's just like, the word didn't become incarnate to disincarnate again, which I think is a great little quip.
I mean, the word is often spoken. It's often a spoken word too, so it's complex. It's not. You know, God didn't write the world into being.
Written is not exactly the same. What I'm saying is, it is written. It's not exactly the same as it is twisted, and I think that's the difference. We're coming out of a period of hyperprint, I think, and we're being kind of in this slightly chaotic social interaction level that I think we're rediscovering how people used to interact before there was a common print culture.
Yeah, no, I
Because
think
another thing is, someone said something.
Grim gets it. Look at this. That's hilarious. Someone provide, yeah. If you could just write out everything that you're saying, I think Anselman would accept it.
I'll get text-to-speech programs and set it up that way.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, something that popped to my mind, or kind of something I thought about the other day. Somebody's thing. Okay, it was Malcolm and Simone a while ago. They were kind of talking about, like, you know, they're doing all this historical research of Christianity and stuff, and they were talking about, like, the Quakers. The Quakers are one of the most notable groups for being abolitionists, but they were comparing them to the Puritans, who weren't as vocal about their abolitionism, but actually had lower percentages of slave owning. You know, they actually repented of owning slaves and you know, freed their slaves at a higher rate than the Quakers did. But the unique thing about the Quakers is that it's like the no authority but the spirit group. So, like, everything is volitional, and it's like, who, you know, what, you know, you're gonna somebody's gonna preach. We don't know who. It's whoever's moved by the Spirit, and the Spirit, and, you know, you can use the Bible, but it's not the authority in that same way. That, you know, nobody's talking about infallibility or anything like that. It's like a thing that's there, but it's not the same way that, like, the Puritans would use it. And so my thought was, you know, there's always this thing that with the words that you say, or the creed that you know, say you believe, and then the example that you live, and hopefully those things line up. But I wonder if, like, maybe you could say the majority of the Puritans were abolitionists because, for the right reasons, because that's what they wanted, much like the Quakers, who were doing everything just by the movement of the Spirit and pure volition. But then there's that higher percentage, and I wonder if it's not that that's the percentage of people who hear the words and do the thing that is the right thing to do, but they're actually doing it, like, for the wrong reasons, like out of fear or something like that. You know, which is just kind of brings up the question of, results are good, but you can do the right thing for the wrong reason, and then that's just like, what are you perpetuating in your culture? because arguably there's a lot of very pietistic movements where people do a lot of things that are objectively good, but if most or even just some of them are doing it purely out of fear and not out of love, it may be a benefit to the people receiving the fruit of their labors, but it's not really a benefit to them. And so that was just kind of a weird
That's the
thing.
American way.
Yeah.
Never mind what you believe. How do you feel it? How is that zeal demonstrated in your action? Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it's like, what is that? Because it's like, I don't think that I regret good things that I've done, maybe for the wrong reasons, like out of peer pressure or something like that. A lot of times you come around to it and recognize, like, oh, it was really good that I was hanging out with those people instead of some other people. But but that's why I always think it's it's concerning when people talk about, like, we need to preserve like a Western canon or something, and that they want everybody to go through the same educational formation process with these same classic books. Is that you're going to get the same answers on the other side, but you can't tell if people actually understand the same thing when they're repeating the same answer.
Denise, for some reason, we're still getting feedback. So it's like you have YouTube still open and you're still choppy. So I don't know. It's
just have to
maybe just try rebooting or something and coming back, because you're adding great stuff. I know you've popped on a stream before, but like that whole thing, I want AI to fix all the audio of what you said before and clip it, because it was excellent. So I don't want to lose your voice here, but I want it improved. And then I think I'll just, if everybody's still rolling, and like, I need to leave in about 15 minutes, but I'll just let everybody keep rolling, because, I trust you guys. It'll be fine.
So to add some seasoning to this, I think it's an agreement with what people are doing, particularly with what Sartori and Alan did. Do you remember, like, our first contact with live written communication over the internet globally with people we didn't have our phone numbers with? Was we decided to default to like role playing. Do you remember this? Like AOL chat rooms and stuff? I know Alan knows what I'm talking about. And I think that was our attempt to understand, to process, what does it mean that I can write something and someone can read it as fast as they heard it if I was in the room with them. And we didn't actually have a format for understanding live writing and reading exchanges like that. It had never been done before. So our default way of dealing with that was to pretend to be in rooms with each other and do the little semicolon thing or whatever. And it kind of, this is before emojis. We were like, how do we do nonverbal communication? Because clearly now we're in this like sort of spoken, it's a written medium, but we're treating it like it's working like it's spoken. So we thought, we have to introduce nonverbal coloring to this, because we're in a verbal space now. And so we role played to communicate that, which is just insane. But we quickly dropped that. We did the lol thing, and we just started coming up with neologisms just for text, so that we could color it with our nonverbal communication. And then the live streaming movement happened, and then we went there, which feels a little more natural, and there's little bumps like audio issues sometimes, but it's funny how we've kind of how wildly we had to act to react to this frankly unnatural medium. Very unnatural. But we only have our natural tools around us. So the technology somehow has it's naturalized in us socially, it also it's just kind of improved and it's gotten higher resolution, so we can pretend like we're hanging out in a room and we don't have to type that we're hanging out in a room. I think that's fascinating, but it also reminds us that this it doesn't mean that this medium is not any more natural than what we were doing with books, which is crazy unnatural. What we were doing with books was an insane technological advancement that was profoundly unnatural in that specific sense, and this is no less so. We just tend to forget about it because the quality's good and we can see each other's smiling faces.
Other thing, I think in regard to that, there's always the people that are chasing the ideal, and therefore, like, it's only real things in person with other people. That's the ideal. But for a certain subset of people, some of whom are represented here, who maybe have a little bit more trouble dealing with not all the aspects of embodied communication, reading the nonverbal cues and the body language and all that stuff. This more flattened simulation of like in-person communication is actually easier to focus on than it can be in person. Especially like the neurodivergent, like, and that's not just a thing I've noticed, but apparently that is like video calls in general was a very good thing for like the neurodivergent people. It actually allows them, it's like the right amount of reduction of sensory information to actually participate at a good level.
I could see that. Yeah, you just have to focus on the way back.
Is the feedback still a problem for me? I just opened my mic.
We'll all be quiet as you speak, and then there won't be feedback.
Okay, the neurodivergent thing, that's another part of what I noticed, because I do have a background in child development, education, and so on. And I did grow up in that kind of family setting, and I don't want to go too far into it because that's like 5 different live streams right there. But this question of neurodivergence being something of a handicap is culturally based, and our culture, I think it's partly from the 50s through maybe up to just before the present day, that we went through a cultural period in which we didn't used to have this kind of label, but the nuns recognized the neurodivergent and because, as I say, it was a family generational type of situation. The nuns were part of our community. They came out of our families and they lived in their convent, and they were very much involved with identifying personality traits in the children from early on, and then steering us into what was felt to be our vocation. This is not done in the public education system at all. It's quite, in fact, they strongly discourage it and consider it to be not a free person if you have that kind of nurturant attitude from your teachers. They do other stuff, but people who are called neurodivergent today used to be called eccentric, and if they went in a direction that included some savant traits, then the nuns really would hone in on that and work with the family to get the savant side supported, because they recognize that as a kind of a gift. So we still have all the problems of the neurodivergent with getting along with other kids, not being able to get jokes is a big problem, being a literalist, the tunnel vision thing which I think someone was just saying, you know, you were just saying that the camera live feed that we're in now makes it easier for neurodivergent to communicate because we have better control over it, and I think it also accommodates our tunnel vision. And we're coming into a time when maybe it's shifting so that that's again not going to be the handicap that it was, but is becoming the advantage because it's a task oriented. Most neurodivergent people are task oriented rather than social oriented. And the socially oriented people are now getting labeled with things like they're being called narcissistic or bipolar. I mean, there really is a narcissistic disorder, but there's a lot of use of that label just because somebody likes to be around, you know, likes to interact too much with groups. And so, and that's, you can see that in a lot of the cultural conflict that's going on. The whole thing of guys and their football teams, that's a social orientation that is now being turned into a handicap. You're not supposed to really be into the team spirit anymore. You're supposed to be off in the corner programming the latest AI model.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that was my.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Social
really...
rules were very, like, social etiquette and all that stuff was very important. The other one I noticed is because I work in construction, and once I came to understand like my own difference or whatever, I realized most of my coworkers are probably on the spectrum. The older guys didn't need a diagnosis because they found their way into shop class. That's where they were able to excel,
So
and they
Jimmy,
were
make
able
sure
to
to mute
build
yourself when not speaking.
a good life.
That was all eliminated in the 1970s. It was forcefully eliminated. The high schools were ordered to stop the trade things, and everyone was told you're a loser unless you go to college. Which, when I was growing up, college was specifically for if you wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer and you needed that kind of academic education. But otherwise, you could be a very well respected professional in every other field because you got it in trade school or through work apprenticeships.
Yeah, this is one place. And sorry, Denise, if you're not talking, could you mute yourself? Sorry, there's a little feedback still. Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, all these things also are cultural demarcators as well, of like, you know, we have a lot of talk about autism and like, oh, will they need treatment or it needs to work out better for them? But it's like, if you're making $200,000 as a computer programmer, but you're like, oh, but I need all these exceptions. It's like, that's fine. You can say like, oh, well, they do need that accommodation. But there's also someone who's completely normal who just has an 85 IQ, whose life, they're going to make $40,000 a year. How can you say one of them gets special exceptions, even though he's the $200,000 guy with the big house, 3 kids, nice car, and then just a person with an 85 IQ who maybe can't even be married, can't find a wife, maybe they can't, whatever.
That's good.
Why is one special and gets the exception, and why is one just like, well, you're just a normal loser and you love baseball, you put on a jersey and root for the Jets, you idiot loser, you're just a dummy. And it's like, that's a cultural marker to be like, well, like, that's not really fair to that guy because he's just like doing the best with the brain he's got and all that stuff. So like, especially with institutions, I think sort of being able to locally decide a little bit more is like to have deeper conversations and make those distinctions at a local level, because I think that especially public school is a perfect example of something that really has no clear telos of what it's really trying to do and no like organizing spirit. I'm just using public schools as an example. It's not the only one, but like, it's like, I don't feel like I spent so much time in public school, and I don't feel like it really helped me do anything other than learning to read and write, which I probably could have learned at home with my parents or with, a tutor coming once a week for 4 hours a week. It's like, what was that for? And, it's like, it's kind of babysitting. It's kind of one of the America's largest trade unions with the teachers unions. It's kind of to support parents who can't afford childcare, so both parents can work. It's all these things, and it's like, well, who created this? Who wanted this to happen? And that's the truth with a lot of things. But I think as we get more localized, as we have more conversations, as the doorways open up, a la what's happening in the corner, people being able to self-publish, people, we can have these at a deeper level. When you really can't. I mean, I've thought a lot about like schooling for my future children, that are whatever years off, but it's like there's there's public school, there's expensive private school, and then there's homeschooling, and that's about it. And all of them have huge benefits and drawbacks, and there's no, so, but to actually like have the ability to be like, you know, make a difference. It's very hard to do, and I don't know. The new dialogue might create new tools. Thanks for letting me get that out there. But that was my little rant.
Yeah, it's funny. I just think of like when I was a kid, I loved computer games. I would have really wanted to learn. I did want to learn how to make computer games, but like Dr. Dobson said they rot your brain or something. So my parents
Yeah.
were like, no, no. It's like, what
Yeah.
could have been? I don't know.
Oh yeah. No, it's like that's one thing where I do think it's helpful to have like these deeper conversations that we have. Is like I think that there's so much freedom. I'll just say it from my perspective in Christ, because it's like once you have that orienting principle, you can view how all these things can be properly oriented rather than doing this like, no, that's evil. Video games are evil. Your desire, your sexuality is evil. It's like, I still see a decent amount about that, specifically with like, attraction, and everyone's like, lust, it's so bad. And it's like, yeah, but it's for a good purpose. Like it has a proper use and a place, and don't just be like, you're bad and evil. You're the only one who's ever looked at a beautiful woman and had these thoughts. It's like, no, it's better to offer someone like, well, you can appreciate beauty, but like to have an inappropriate desire, to bring them into harmony, to bring them into union with the ideal that Christ gives us. Like that allows you to take even ugly things or bad things and be like, okay, well, how can we harmonize this?
Yeah, Christ redeems body and soul, so we don't have to hate the body to love the soul.
Yeah, and it gives us
together. Mm-hmm.
It gives us the agency to look for ways to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, how can we harmonize? How can we take the kid who's autistic and is really, bad at a lot X, Y, and Z, but really good at, ABC? How can we harmonize it? Even though he'll get an education that's different, how can that work? Or the person who's really sociable but isn't good at, math and science. It's like, all these different ways. And how can we order it around these principles? Versus like it's kind of arbitrary at this point of like, why do we sit in 4 rows of 4 desks in a classroom, 16 kids, one teacher sitting at the front? It's like
a cubicle. They're forming us for the 20th century economy, which no longer exists.
Yeah. So just being able to have more agency and to like take in, come up with designs that work towards a purpose and in like in a better way, versus just like, well, this is how it is, because I think those that's gonna go away. This is how it is always dying. The old is always dying, and there's always the new coming, and so you can't just rely on this is how it is.
Yeah, that's like with our kids. I know it's like we got some like we had some tests for my older daughter to confirm stuff that we probably could have just guessed anyway. But it's like a knowledge that I want to have, but it's for us to figure out how to parent them out. But it's like don't want to have them think there's anything wrong with them, but also don't want to give them a label that they can use as an excuse for themselves. And it's like, I don't know. How do you, trying to walk that line, because it's like, yeah, it's just, it's crazy. And of course, I'm sure we'll screw some amount of stuff up, and they'll resent us for not doing something that they will know is like better in 20 years. But
I've seen kids be told that they have a superpower, which is a nice way. You know, it's kind of like saying that they're handy capable or something. And that's not quite balancing things either, because that's sort of saying, well, now you're special, now you're superior to people who don't have this, and you're not really trying to raise them to think that way either. I imagine, you know, you're trying to think like you can be, you're yourself, you're good as is, and so's that other kid. Like, I mean, God shaped both of you, and He shaped you differently, but you don't need to hierarchize your value system socially just because you're different.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I mean, I really value the things that I was challenged, that it's like the things that didn't come easily to me, but that I was more or less forced to conform to some amount of like normalcy. Like, I appreciate all of the skills I gained in that way. So, but, you know, there was a little bit of like just weird thinking of like, what the heck is wrong with me? That maybe would have been, it would have been nice to have like some more understanding in that regard, and maybe some more encouragement to pursue the things that I was more suited towards. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. You know, I kind of feel like that's why all those guys in the Bible had like so many kids, because it's like it takes 12 sons. It takes 12 sons to figure out how to raise one good one or two good ones.
One of them's going to be autistic, so you need. It used to be IQ. I remember everybody used to just say, "Well, that's just the smart kid in the class, and he's weird because he's smart." You know.
Yeah, well, that is a thing, and I mean that is, even you can just attribute to that. It's just like, yeah, we found out our daughter has a pretty high IQ, and
Sure.
it is a weird, it is a thing where it's like, yeah, they might think you're smarter if you're nice, but otherwise they'll just think you're weird, and and then you'll be confused when the other kids don't understand what you're trying to say, because you're like noticing things that they just don't notice. So it's like,
smart's not the right algorithm for that. It's like way too narrow, isn't it? It really doesn't help people.
Although it is funny, because then I think it's very helpful to have orienting like events that everyone does and everyone participates in. Like, you know, I've talked about the summer camp I went to. Like, a lot of it was like sitting around a campfire, and you didn't have to do anything, but you're all experiencing the same thing. You're all, you know, or you're participating in a level that's very, you know, accessible. You know, maybe there's a competition, but everyone participates, and, you know, it doesn't matter if you're not very good. And it, you know, it's running. You know, we had a relay race. It's like, even if you're slow, you know, whatever, it's fine. Like, everyone knows there are gonna be some slow kids, you know. And it's like, it doesn't require you to juggle or anything, you know, like, I'm not good at basketball. It's like, yeah, you can run 100 meters. I'm sorry, but, you know.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's like there's an impulse to like try to specialize people, when you find out like where they're good at, but it's like, no, if you have everybody do everything, then it's like one kid gets to be the star on the like sports day, but then the other kid is, you know, the top at like the crafts thing or whatever, you know. And
there's going to be chess club at camp,
and then you can have mutual respect, you know.
But that, I also think, needs a basket for that mutual respect to like sit in, which is like, I might be different, but we both have some unifying identity around us. And then you have to be careful about that, because then people are going to resent, like, you made me be a Christian, you made me do Boy Scouts, you made me go to summer camp, how dare you? It's like, well, I'm trying to give you a unifying identity where you can relate to other people, you know, and like people, you know, people wear their little Princeton University hat because they want communal identities. But also sometimes they resent communal identities and be like, I hated growing up being raised Quaker. I hated, you know, growing up in a town that loved football. And I hate Texas because, you know, it's so stupid how much they cared about the football team. It's like, well, that's you know, it's like, it's tough. And yeah, I do have to have some grace and mercy of like, yeah, like there are going to have to be trade-offs. It can't be perfectly tailored just to you. And you are going to want, like what you said earlier, Michael, about like liking learning sort of like these people call like masking techniques to like fit in with a larger group. And even even normal people need to learn these things. Normal, even non-autistic, I should say.
So I gotta go. You kids are alone. So don't do anything crazy. I'm not gonna be able to let anyone else back in if they leave or any new people in. And just have a good time. I trust you guys. You guys are good. It's a good conversation. I'll be listening. Anyhow, thanks for coming. And I'm gonna go. Bye.
Thanks for hosting us. Mark S says, to be fair, many autistics are huge sports fans.
Well, that's one thing with autism that like always makes me laugh. Of like, it's so broad that I'm like, what does this possibly mean? It's like the person who literally will be like, oh,
My
I
plan
can't
was
look
to
at
read your book this week, Matt, but things have not gone according to plan. But I'm gonna get around to it.
I wanna read your book.
You're muted. You're muted in some sense that doesn't show that you're muted. But we can't hear you.
I want to read your book, but I want to buy it. I want to take it out of your hands.
We still can't hear you. Unless if I just can't hear you. Can other people hear him?
Uh-oh.
I hear him fine.
Yeah. You might be getting a phone call.
Oh. I don't know. I just put it on the headphones and now I can hear you. It must have been something
He's
weird
gaslighting
with
you.
the car.
He's
That's
trying
why
to.
I'm sorry.
That's why
I
you just ignored
apologize.
what Alan said. I want to read your book, but I want to buy it out of your hands, signed in Chicago. That's probably a pipe dream at this point. So
Yeah,
I don't buy it off your plate.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking. Yeah, are you gonna go to the other one too, or just the Chicago one? You can
probably do both. The other one's
Okay.
actually easier, honestly.
I might go. I'm thinking I could probably convince my wife maybe to go for one. We'll see. I don't know if I can justify it. I do have a conversation, a private conversation, tentatively arranged with somebody to help me figure out my next steps for getting things done in the real world. So, if I get a little bit of momentum that I can justify things, because I don't have that like hobby money or whatever, like Mark Parker going to every event, across the globe or whatever. But
yeah, he's got that DD-214 money, doesn't he? That's what I hear.
I don't know. What is that? That
he served and he's honorably discharged, so he's getting that second check.
Okay.
That's something I wish they had told us in high school. Just go, do your time. They're going to pay for college for you, and you'll get a second income when you retire at 38 after 20 years in service. And then you can just go pick. You can do a career just because you feel like it, and then get an income from that, or not. Nobody told us that. By the time you're 40, you'll be free to do whatever the heck you want. You get two incomes. Actually, a lot of them you get two incomes just from the Army, because the second one is they render you disabled.
Yeah.
So,
I have a friend that he did that happened to him. He also got married. Him and his bunkmate got married so that they could each get the spousal benefits, though they are not romantically connected. They just did it to scam the system, which it's like, that's the government's fault for allowing such scams to be. I'm sure it must be, because they were like, oh, well, if you get married, you'll each get more money, and you don't have to live in this crappy like bunk house or whatever. You can go get like you'll get a stipend for like better housing. So it's like, yeah, why wouldn't we do that? Like, you know, it's just weird because you have to at some point, like he was dating, I think I don't know if he got married. He was dating or was engaged to a girl. I wonder if that's like a weird, like, yeah, I have to divorce my my army buddy before we can get officially married. Like,
That's hilarious. Michael in the chat served for 4 years in the Marine Corps, which is neat. Yeah, I think there's several folks.
Yeah. Will we get to a place in the corner where we get stipends? I posted for 15 years in the corner. I'm retiring.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you render me? Can you determine that I'm legally disabled and give me a paycheck for that?
Yeah.
For posting for 15 years.
Well,
my wrists. I have carpal tunnel from commenting in the chat.
I need to get more view hours to qualify for membership, and then my mom can subscribe to my channel, and YouTube can take 30% of her $5 or whatever. But I was thinking maybe I would just do karaoke videos as like a member's perks.
Brilliant.
Like, what could I do that would be not hard but would be something that you could point to as an incentive for people to give me $5.
You've got my $5.
All right, I got to drop, guys, but thanks for hanging. This is fun.
Yeah, thanks
All
for
right.
Yeah.
Good insights from Alan. Always enjoy Alan. And Clara, I wish we had more Clara time because I know she was.
Yeah, I didn't mean to leave. I couldn't really hear what she was saying, and then when I came back, she was gone. But I really wish I had caught everything she was saying. Am I still muted?
No, we can hear you. Denise, I don't know if you said, did you say
Oh, okay.
what part of the country you grew up in? Where?
I grew up in Massachusetts. Family was all New England family, but I've lived in Texas for the past 26 years.
Oh, well, I also grew up in Massachusetts and now live in Texas. So
I grew up near Worcester.
okay, yeah, I'm not.
What part of Massachusetts?
Not too far over in Milford.
Yeah, I grew up in a little town of Webster, and I spent a lot of time in the Berkshires because I had a sister who was 12 years older than me, who married, and he was a Berkshire man. So I spent my summers from about age 7. I spent all my summers in the Berkshires. So I had a real, different parts of Massachusetts. A lot of people think it's all Boston, but it's really quite different between the two sides of that state.
Yeah.
And but things happen, and I couldn't take what Massachusetts was becoming, so I headed to Texas.
Yeah.
I tried to get her to move
ahead of time
down here, but she didn't like it.
You saw it way ahead of time.
I can't hear you.
Right? Yeah, you saw what was coming way ahead of time. I didn't leave until 2018.
They broke what's going on now in the crazy parts of this country. This is just another cycle of the same thing, because I graduated high school in 1971. So I was in college for the big wave of the student peace movement. I was real active in that. But in 1969, and there was a wave of total burn downs of the textile mills throughout New England, and they were all arsons. They were all written up in the press as accidental. We knew what was going on. They were moving. They said that a decision somewhere among the powers that be was made that we want to have an American textile industry anymore. So the first step was burn down all the New England textile mills. I mean, we lived through that. I remember when the fire started, my mother was banging on the bedroom door, and I thought it was our house because I could see flames reflected in the mirror, but then it was the mills across the way. These were active 3 shifts full mills. These were not derelict buildings. And they decided they weren't going, the fire and police came through to tell us we had to evacuate because they were not going to try to save the neighborhood. And the men said, no, we're not going. They got up on the roof. Our building had the only flat roof. All the other roofs around were the old industrial 1800 slate roof buildings, peaked roofs. So they got up and kept water hose, garden hose water going on any embers that landed on the roofs. It was New Year's Eve, and it started to snow, which saved our houses. But for the rest of the week, the town kept trying to make us evacuate, and the whole neighborhood refused to budge. So I lived through that. I was just in high school because I didn't even realize, we had a few days of it was the New Year's holiday. Then when we went back to school, everyone was looking at me like, you smell like smoke. And it was like, of course, all the clothing and everything in our house was all smoke damage. And, then the kids found out where I lived and realized that I lived in a neighborhood that, as I say, was cult-like. And it's a good thing to grow up in a cult. You grow up sane these days if you grow up in a cult. I'm sorry, but that's just reality. The people who survive the current chaos are all going to be parts of all kinds of different cults. But anyway, yeah, so we saw that happen. And then they moved to the textiles, first to the Deep South. Then very quickly they went, before they could really even establish an industrial base in the Deep South, they all moved to China. Now we're seeing the same thing, but not with industrial structure so much as with city life. I mean, the cities are being burned down, and the businesses are all being looted. And it's very similar because it really doesn't make logical sense in terms of actually, if when it was going on in the 70s, there were people, the left wing was more conservative than it is today. We did not have the sexual politics. It was economic politics. The unions were part of the work ethic. We felt that we owned our factories, so it was the kind of applied socialism that doesn't exist anymore. We didn't feel that the owners were our adversaries. We felt that the unions allowed us to bargain with them. My uncle was the head of the local textile workers when all this happened. And so we interacted with, because the owners were sort of local. I mean, where my uncle was head, that was a Rockefeller-owned plant, and David Rockefeller lives in Leominster, Massachusetts. So he used to ride through, and it was a human thing. But then when the mill started getting burned, and Rockefeller's didn't, it's still there, but the others got burned down. They had all been first sold to these absentee owners, so it was a different process. And then the absentee owners burned it down for the insurance. And it's only in hindsight that we can see that, well, wait a minute, there was something more than just all of a sudden a bunch of factory owners decided they wanted insurance money. It was much more coordinated than that, but it's a historical process that's it can't be conspiracy theory, because human beings can't conspire as efficiently as these weird historical cycles are happening. That's my opinion, that it's something other is doing this, and we're going through cycles. And right now, I hope we survive the present one without it spreading too far beyond what it's already doing. But I think we are being forced to return to a kind of pre-industrial human culture, and we have to rediscover how to live. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of a lot of the ideas that I was trying to, kind of answer, questions I was trying to answer with the book that I wrote. Because I see that, like, there seems like there's a window here to accomplish something if the churches wise up to
Denise, make sure to mute.
the needs of the future.
Thank you.
Because I think that there's a lot of wisdom that still exists, but it's in danger, especially people of your generation, and they're not connecting with the younger generations. And a lot of the younger generations are resentful towards the people of our parents' generation. But I think we need to bridge that gap so that we can gain the wisdom. And I think that people need to, broadly speaking, get a more generalist skill set, because that way, if you know how to solve problems, broadly speaking, you can survive some sort of crisis because you can adapt. But anybody that's gone to seek a career in some super specialized industry, they might, it's like, even the thing, what they said, like, oh, people can learn how to code, and it looks like that is going to be gone very quickly. I think there's always going to be some need for skilled trades and things like that, but also the people that have those skills need to learn how to use them to work together with other people. But really, like it was what you were saying about, like, a cult in a sense, but it doesn't have to be cult-like, but stronger local communities that can weather some of these storms. And I think a lot of people realize the need for that. I think because just the isolation that they're experiencing, but it's really important, I think, because of surviving, unknown crises of the future, that a tight-knit community where people trust each other, where there's a diversity of skills and abilities, contained, that's a community that's going to be okay. It might be hard, but they'll figure it out. But with everybody all isolated and alone, it's going to be bad. And
something that's encouraging in God's sovereign, gracious plan, He shaped us to, like, pirate-like, reform this deeply inhumane internet space so that we could kind of practice how to be generalists again, how to be humane, and how to have, as close as you can online. We can kind of pretend in a really authentic way, I think, in a sincere way, I guess, to get think through complex topics and have sustained modes of thought that the algorithm doesn't train us to do. and so that if there is something coming that's even worse, I think many of the people who have been engaging here for the last couple of years are probably going to be better off in a way. You know, we're going to be able to be more comfortable with not clearly defined solutions. We're going to be able to think through and process things well verbally and in dialogue with others when there's not a clear winner loser paradigm kind of thing with a solution. It's going to be good for a lot of people. I feel like that's what we're being accidentally trained up for, which is encouraging.
Yeah. I mean, and the way I think about it too is that, you know, like doomerism is bad, that like pessimism, that just, you know, well, like the hopelessness is bad. It's really like, that was the big problem with the whole like event of 2019, 2020. Like the fear was the worst part of it. That had probably the most negative impact on people. But if you can, you know, be brave enough to realize that, like, you know, yeah, real crises do happen, and you prepare for them in that way, not just like as trying to be a survivalist. You can't do it on your own. You know, there's some guy in Kentucky that had a super bunker, and somebody broke in and shot him because he wanted the bunker. You know, like so you need to build the relationships of trust. Without forsaking, you know, preparation and all that stuff too. But if people do that, it might be the best chance of actually averting some sort of a crisis, because it's a return to the patterns of living that produce healthy, happy people and communities. So that's
really encouraging, because we can learn it now when there's really relatively little friction to learning it. You just have to have a job that allows you to listen into these things and sometimes talk. If there is a future frictionful future coming for us, it's going to be a lot more challenging to learn it on the fly then. Better to learn it now. Wouldn't you agree, Denise?
Yeah.
If you have to fight over a bunker, you don't want to have to learn how to negotiate these challenges.
I'm not into that stuff. And another thing I did a poll once when I was doing some, I don't know what platform it was in, but you could do a poll. And the poll was, are you a prepper? Are you not prepping? Or are you, no, the choice was, I am a prepper. I am not a prepper. I am not a prepper, but I have a list of my neighbors who are. Only a few people really got that. But one of the things I tell people is like, look, you can save up the food and everything, and I'm into the food pantry prep type of, you know, prepping. But the fact is, you can, and also to have a stash that you can reach into and give to somebody who comes to the door when they start walking around asking for stuff, and they can see that you have stuff and you're giving on it, but they can also see the supply go down, but you have another stash that you don't let them know. And I said, well, that's a good strategy, but eventually your neighbors are going to notice that you're not losing any weight. Things can get that bad. And we really have to consider, maybe there's another reason to revive practices like fasting.
So you don't get eaten by our neighbors.
Yeah. Well, they're going to say you got weight, you know. Got to be getting something somewhere. She's not losing any weight. But also, and then there's people who think, well, you can just go live off the land, and they don't realize that doesn't work really either, because even if you get all the skills you need to know what to forage for, it takes very few people foraging in a certain area to exhaust the supply of whatever food they're getting, the berries or, different kinds of plants or whatever. And people don't realize that we have a really strange agricultural system that's based on producing massive amounts of food. We have forgotten how delicate the wilderness supply really is.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I see, like, there is a time, there is sort of a renewed interest and, oh, sorry, can you mute?
Remember to mute, Denise.
There's a lot of people that are becoming more interested in learning, like, sort of practical crafts and things that, for the joy of doing it, like, that's one of the things the internet has really spread, is like a lot of kind of DIY culture, and a lot of that's goes into things like people are planting gardens and you get a few chickens in your backyard, and it's like if your neighborhood has a lot of that, even though it's probably like it's not enough for a family to survive on by themselves, but then you share with your neighbors and they share with you, you'll be able to make it through. And so as much as I could see, but it's like I'm glad that there's a lot of people that seem to be doing it because it's fun and it's exciting. And if they do it because it's fun and exciting, hopefully they'll get those benefits of it, and they'll be able to deal with, like, grocery prices going up and without causing riots. And then if things settle back down, everything doesn't have to get completely destroyed. Like, so it's like if you prepare for for some crisis, at least, maybe you just have small ones that you actually have to weather.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Matt, if you look in the private chat, I didn't want to say publicly, but what the person I'm talking to, who I think has a lot of interesting things to talk about some of this stuff. So hopefully that'll help.
Oh, that's great.
Make some connections. Yeah.
So you've got some future conversations coming. You've got some future content. That's wonderful.
Not content, well, I don't know, maybe someday, but just a private conversation, because I reached out and I was like, hey, I'm trying to figure out, like, next steps for a career thing. I need, like, a job or a mentor or something, like, because I've more or less maxed out on, like, my self, what I can do on my own. And the whole point of it is that you can't do everything on your own. So I figure maybe he knows some people that he could connect me with that could be like-minded.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, because the other person that I really wanted to talk to, one of the Southeast estuary speakers, has not. I don't know. Maybe I came on a little too strong. It is. I haven't really heard much back yet. But if you can probably guess who I'm talking about, that many of our friends have had conversations with. But
Kale Zeldin.
I'll talk to Kale.
Yeah.
I think
I remember the first time I ever saw you, Michael, was you were talking about, you were doing a stream about asking folks to come out and learn a trade from you,
Yeah.
Instead of just sitting around online complaining about how they don't know how to work with their hands. Like, you could give them a viable thing. So that's cool. You're asking for it from the other end now.
So the thing is like right now, the company I work for, which I'm not very busy today, as you can see, because I'm sitting here in my room. But my job's pretty secure. It's pretty stable. But, like, if I can't really just set up my own thing as an employee of this big company. and the next like promotion up is just, it's a totally different skill set. It's like a managerial thing. It's not well suited for my abilities.
They take
And
you off
so,
the field. Yeah.
yeah, and so the options would be either to connect with a church that wants to help build some kind of a program, or a business that wants to connect to some kind of a program, like maybe like a trade business, a trades business. Like I could potentially start one on my own, but it's like it's a little risk. It's pretty. I mean, it's risky. I have really good insurance. We're having another baby. Like I'm not gonna do that on my own. But my wife doesn't want to work so much, and she gets paid pretty well from our church. So, we're gonna have to figure out how to readjust our situation a bit. The way I see it ultimately is, it's like if nobody in like the big evangelical megachurch world sees the value in the thing that I'm trying to build, then we're toast anyway. So I don't think that's the case. I think that there probably are people. There is actually I was talking about it in the other stream, but there's a pastor here at one of the big mega churches, and he's seen that like the church as nonprofit run on donations model is kind of limited. And he was even thinking about it in the sense of like, at some point, this will become, if a government becomes hostile, that's bad. Is really even in a macro sense, that what I was just describing with like a neighborhood, that, the church needs to have some streams of revenue involvement in like the marketplace, which is a way to do ministry. Like right now they're doing it kind of, and this is like kind of the part that I think people aren't getting. Like they're doing it in the classic way of like, what about these guys that are coming out of prison and now they're saved, or the guys that used to be on drugs and now they're saved, like they don't have opportunities. And it's like, well, there's actually more opportunities for those guys than there are for regular guys that don't have any strikes against them, because you're regular, so you don't need a special program, except that really there's the path for young men is so eroded, then that's what we need. So I think it's like, yeah, that guy seems like he would get it. I don't know. I'm very cautious just about like, if I were to work for a church, just like the overall culture of a church is, let me say, like an old church we worked at, they accomplished a lot. They had an underdeveloped concept of Sabbath that was not good for the staff, I would say. So, and that's maybe some of my reservation, like maybe with this church in particular. But I don't know, something. I think the opportunities are out there. It's just a lot of connecting people and getting people to take a risk, and and maybe limiting the risk, and just say, hey, let's just try this easy thing that won't cost a lot of money and see how it goes. Like, because you could even, like I've said before, you could do it as a volunteer thing. Just find the old ladies that need yard work or need stuff picked up in your house, the people already in your community. Get the the empty nesters that have time on their hands, the dads, whose kids have left, and the high school and college age guys, and you pair those guys together and have them fix the old lady's house, and you've done like an amazing thing for 3 people, because guys, I think guys want to feel useful too, guys like feeling useful. But like, if you're sitting in the church and you just see the people on the platform, like as those are the important people, then you don't think you don't realize what you have to offer. But it's like, if you're somebody who has a stable family life and a work ethic, like just that is like a super valuable thing for you to share with a young man, probably.
I would think you're the best. Are you? I mean, is there a better state than Texas for doing what you're proposing. I would think you're really well positioned, as you typically are. You have the foresight to know where you got to be.
Foresight hasn't gotten me anything so far. So, but yeah, no, I do think like Texas. Yeah, it's like it is a good. It is a good problem. I would think it's so weird though. This is the weirdest thing about like coming from the north, like because there was a high cost to being a Christian, like all the evangelical churches were filled with people who really wanted to be there for like the right reasons. And down here, there is still somewhat of a like cultural thing that attracts a lot of wishy-washy people or insincere people or whatever. So it's hard to like. The churches are they're big, but they're real fluffy. You know, you don't really know what the substance of that body is composed of.
I grew up for a bit in the Bible Belt in South Carolina, but I always got the impression Texas is different, or they always try to remind you that they're different. It's just Texas is Texas, but maybe that's a similarity, really. I don't know if they're properly Bible Belt in Texas, or if Texas is Texas in that respect, but that sounds pretty similar to Bible Belt.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's also like, well, so here in San Antonio, like probably most of the big cities, it's very much people from all over living here now. So there is some of that like homogenization through like moving around. Like there's not a lot of like locals. There are some obviously, but so it's not. But you know, it's just weird. Like it's just all. You know, I'll say like the example would be. So when I was working more like in people's houses with my job, which I don't have to do so much now. Like I'd go to people's houses all the time and they would have like crosses and Bible verses on the walls and all these things. And it's like, you know, that indicated nothing as far as like the character of the person or their temperament or how much of a complainer they were going to be about the brand new house that they bought with the cabinets that were bothering them. Like, so, which to me is sad, you know, because it's like, you know, and even like that was like, I might have, you know, I'd look for the clues and be like, should I strike up a conversation with this person? And if they're complaining about if the work is like, if they're very upset about the work reason I'm there work wise, I'm like, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to do a really good job so I don't have to come back. Like, but you know, but there have been people where I've had nice conversations about stuff when you see a point of connection. But
yeah, which is surprising. It's, you know, I mean, I'm not trying to open this up because I know this is like a whole other screen topic, but like just a gesture at it. It's funny that the kids want Christendom back when, like, we've seen it in the Bible Belt in the 90s and 2000s and even today to some extent. You know, we know what it looks like to just kind of have you know, some kind of normalized soft version, like a squishy residual background version of Christianity that everyone kind of genuflects towards, but there's not really much expected beyond that. Yeah.
Well, you know, there's also some other. I think we're getting a very weird picture of like what the world is like, or America, or the church in America, based on our like algorithmic stuff. Like, you know, because you know what's funny? Like there was a thing about this the other day. So our pastor, he's African American. You know what the little corner doesn't have like any of is African Americans. I don't see my pastor or any of his family or the college students that he brings from Crew longing for a return to Rome or Constantinople. You know, it's just like, it's not on the radar of a lot of like a majority culture. And I think that's even the thing is like,
Yeah.
I think it disproportionately affects people that have worked in like evangelical churches because of the whole "this is how the sausage is made" thing. And but like the people there, it's just church to them, and they like it, and they like watching The Chosen. They like the K-Love music, and they just like it with pure sincerity because they don't have all the weird baggage that people that listened to the Seashells sermon and got radicalized do. So
They miss the seashells. They miss John Piper's seashell sermon. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and you know what? He was wrong about seashells because seashells are amazing and God created them, and they can teach us much about the beauty of creation. So
yeah.
Wow, what is I don't know what you guys are referencing at all.
Okay, so
I have zero Reformed DNA, so
so this is Aaron Wren just posted a thing like the other day about it. It was about like the self-confidence of boomers or something. So John Piper gave this sermon at a Passion conference in like, what was it, like 2001 or two? It was like 2001 or 2000, something like.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a while ago. It was a long time ago, and he was talking about. He's like, I only have 35 minutes to convince you to reject this materialist culture, and it was like he was reading this thing from Reader's Digest about this couple that retired early, and they spend their time playing softball and cruising on their beach in Florida and collecting seashells. And then he says, like, this woman is like going to get before the gates of heaven, and Jesus is going to ask her what she has to show for her life, and she's going to say, my shell collection. And then he actually turned like the sermon into a book called Don't Waste Your Life.
Yep.
And it was like
it was
a big it was like kindling or a log that was thrown on the whole like young restless reform.
I want to lock this guy. Here's my instinct, okay? I want to lock this guy in a room with Esther Meek and see what happens.
Because so you can like it was an answer. It was us trying to articulate a reaction against the boomer culture, I think, is what that was meant to do. And maybe it was for the right reasons, but it was the wrong. He's a boomer himself, I think, but he was trying to help us articulate what do we not like. Just like what PVK said about boomers, they didn't necessarily reject the, what did he say, the morals of the greatest generation, their ethical hierarchy, but they saw hypocrisy and they wanted more consistency. So they had a revolution for consistency's sake. And I think that's what Piper was kind of pointing at for Michael and I's generation, who were in like crew in the 2000s, was like, how do you reject the hypocrisy of the boomer generation? Of just like consuming and you've reached the end of your, like you can pay your bills now. So now you're done with life. So now you can collect seashells because you paid into the system and now it's paying you back. You've been an economic success, so now you can collect seashells. You can receive your earthly reward, which is hard. Like, which is that from that paradigm that should be critiqued. But to just say throw away your seashells, that's not.
The interesting thing is that John Piper, so his thing that he was like famous for is Christian hedonism, that he coined the term, and his book was Desiring God, and because he takes like the phrase from whichever like Westminster Catechism that says the chief end of man is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. Mm-hmm. And then he says that he changes and to by. So it's God is so it's the chief end of man is to glorify God by enjoying him forever, which I think actually really is not a bad thing. And if you understand it correctly, it would be that we are all learning about God and knowing about
But what
God.
does he think that the woman who's collecting the seashells was doing? That's the
So
problem.
I just want to get to it. So here's the problem.
Wasting your life by not being a missionary.
So here's the problem. It's that you should enjoy God. You glorify God by enjoying him, which should be through all the various aspects of creation that resonate
Correct.
with the people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But John Piper in particular most enjoys God by being super pietistic and nerdy about exegesis. And
so you don't have to inflict your autism on the rest of us.
Yeah. So and honestly, a lot of people basically were like, probably didn't, because he was an authority, and they were like, he's saying this, but when I see him do it, it's just talk about the Bible like all day long and nothing else. And so like that was the weird disconnect. It's like he had a good message and he was the absolute like worst person to explain it.
Right.
I guess the Restless and Reform movement was an anti-boomer movement in a way, which is interesting.
Well, it's weird because Piper and Keller are definitely boomers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of.
I think most modern religious conservative movements are to some effect rebellion against the values of openness that were cultivated by the boomers in their idealistic youth, and a lot of them became cynical and disillusioned, and so it's hardly surprising that they would participate in the deconstruction of their own idealism. But what's fun, this is why I'm so out of step with most of TLC on this, because I actually think the mistake was the becoming disillusioned with the idealism and becoming cynical. That was what spoiled that generation. It's not the idealism that they started out with. A lot, not all of it was good, obviously, but there were parts of it that were very, very good and very, very needed, and actually permanently changed the culture for the better. I don't think we could be doing what we're doing right now, for example, without what they had done. Like this kind of open, critical, public discussion, like questioning everything that we're doing all the time. It's like the ability to do that, and I think that's a sane and sensible thing to do. That is largely because of the good things that they did. So yeah, and I think that there are things that are right to critique, there are definitely things that are right to critique, but there's also some really good things that get thrown out in the process too, by association. So yeah,
sure,
yeah. I've said many times, and I just kind of wrote up another little piece because there was so much talk about the changing traditions and whatever, and I think the final step of maturity is that people there's nothing wrong with changing traditions, especially if it's actually bringing you into closer communion with God, but at some point you need to reconcile with your parents and understand that their faith was genuine, if it usually is, even though it just has a very different expression. And actually what I said is I think that people are saying they want a lot of these traditions because there's more reverence but what it actually is more gravitas. And there are things that have a lot of gravitas, but there are also like mirthful elements and joyous elements of the faith that deserve reverence. And I think the baby boomers, that was a big part of the connection for them, because with all the charismatic movements and the Jesus people and the praise and worship and stuff like that, because boomers really connected, I think, with like the praise music and stuff. And the problem is, however, that didn't get communicated to like the kids of our generation. It seemed like disingenuous or whatever, like why are you all happy clappy in church and then you're like not a very good dad? Like I could say, like for my my wife's brother, that's probably very much the thing, like because her dad loves to sing, he's a great singer, connects to God through the praise and worship and all this stuff, has a short temper, is a grouchy guy sometimes, and like that, and that disconnect, like, because even my brother-in-law, he said, he's like, Christians are supposed to be like the happiest people, and they're always the most miserable, and that's basically more or less why he rejects it. So yeah.
So is that hypocrisy, or is that does every new generation just perceive hypocrisy of their parents?
Yes.
And it's not always hypocrisy.
Well, yeah, I think it's hypocrisy because it's not coupled with repentance.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Because the parents are just saying, do as I say, and like, honestly, like, man, there was so much of that. Like, it's interesting because, like, I think, and I've been talking to my parents somewhat about this, and it's almost like because they were inconsistent in it, but they are new believers, and then there's a lot of new believers, and then they have kids, and then it's like having kids that while you're already like a Christian is this novel thing, because like my faith has to inform how we raise our kids some way. And so then they kind of tried to, and then they try to do the whole like Dr. Dobson thing. And I think that there is this strong desire for parents to like orchestrate this little scenario to protect their kids from the bad stuff that they remember from their childhood or whatever. Like even my dad, who said, like, he said he didn't share a lot about his past because he felt that it was shameful, like that he had experimented with drugs and alcohol and things like that, and he had a pretty rough start before he got born again. And then like it's all water under the bridge now, but I said to him, like, I think it actually would have been really helpful if you were more open about that, because kids just see their parents as like from the start, like your parents are like perfect or amazing or whatever until they prove otherwise. And oftentimes that proof comes over like a long period of time as you grow up. And so, but like my dad, like the thing is like whenever he got mad and he would discipline us, and he was obviously angry, and he would always apologize and be like, it was not right for me to be angry, like I was sinning because I shouldn't have disciplined you when I was angry. And it's like that, those repentances went a long way for me, and I think probably for my siblings as well, but they're still a little bit grumpier about things.
Two things. What really quickly I wanted to address Anselman's curiosity about the print that's behind me. It's actually Anselman. It's actually your countryman, the Scottish symbolist John Duncan. It's a piece from, I believe, 1905. It's called "Riders of the Sidhe," and yeah, it does have a very Arthurian vibe, which is why I chose it. So he was asking if it was Guinevere going out to ride, but no, it's "Riders of the Sidhe." So that's what it is. And then on the parenting thing, the yet to be released conversation that I had with Sam Tiedemann on liberalism, which he's going to put out after he gets back from vacation. it was interesting because one of the things that we ended up talking about in the conversation that I wasn't not anticipating talking about, and that I brought up because it kind of just dawned to me in the middle of the conversation, is that I think one of the reasons that we have this disconnect from the way that older generations view the liberal experiment with it. Most people from older generations would like to preserve, still like to preserve, and these younger generations are kind of just done with it. The difference in the way those respective generations were parented is actually at play here, because those older generations are more comfortable with having less control and being more open to explore the world and make mistakes. Whereas these younger generations were raised with a much more helicopter parenting style, and they're used to having mommy and daddy tell them what to do, so they don't have as much like just absolute aversion to the idea of having all kinds of guardrails set up in the political order. And I think that's definitely there's actually like a deep psychological factors from childhood that are coming into play, and these radical differences on how we view whether the liberal project is worth repairing and continuing or just discarding altogether.
That's really good.
Yeah, you know, it's fun and it's interesting too, because I remember I did talk with Sam one time, and it's hard. It's important for people to understand, because, and I know John Vervaeke's now, he's talked about it, and I looked, and yeah, there's like studies on it or whatever. But I said, you know, because people are like have such a hard time understanding, like, why does Sam cling to these strange unorthodox beliefs? And it's like, and also similarly with like Mormons and stuff. And I said, I talked to him, and he said that his dad did a really good job, like being a parenting him, and he was sincere. And so it's like, why should he, you know, it's like you honor your father by following in the faith that you receive, and if you're doing it the right way, there's no reason why you should question that. And like that's a you know, that's a really powerful thing that we don't, when we only think about like which tradition has the right propositions or whatever, we totally ignore the fact that like the people that live rightly are going to have their children follow in their footsteps, even if the beliefs that they espouse might be wrong or inferior or whatever.
Yeah, so I guess like that's why my son is an Anglican libertarian. So, yeah.
It was so cool, Steve. His admiration for you, Nate, was just it was effluent.
Well, you know, it's funny. I laugh about that now, but there was a phase where I thought he was going to be like a reformed authoritarian. For real, it's like I thought it's like, oh, it's like no, he's gonna go like straight, like he's gonna end up like going to Doug Wilson's college or something and just be like the absolute
I can tell
opposite.
That side and could articulate it. He was able to interact with that, which is really cool.
Yeah, because he kind of was going down that path for a while, and like argued with me over like everything. So, and then I was just waited it out, and he swung back around on his own, and it's like, so now, yeah, he's a good old fashioned right liberal.
Yeah, and that's funny, even because I thought like I really liked Reformed kind of theology or whatever, because like it was right and all that stuff. And then when I like got on Twitter and I'm like, like, you know, because I've always been in like these Arminian Pentecostal churches just because of circumstances, and I'm like, finally, I'm going to like fill my feed with the people whose theology I like, And then I'm like, these people are miserable. So it's like, it wasn't so much the theology. It was like my dad was a good example of it. And like, Tim Keller, who was a guy that he knew from early on in his faith. So it's like, yeah, that's what I like. I like the winsomeness more so than the Calvinism or whatever. And PBK is a prime example too. So.
PBK is great. He's my favorite Calvinist.
Yeah, so I say PBK. He is finding PBK. I was like, oh, this is what it was like to be a person in the church I grew up, where my dad was the pastor. But I had the dad relationship. But I'm like, oh, this was what it was like for the people who had the pastor relationship. So he reminds me of my dad a lot.
Can I just say, I want to say one thing. I think TLC's had had a fascinating, very complicated relationship with Calvinism in particular. And my sense early on, which is
Matt, part of that is like there are certain parts of Christianity that are just they are like that. Catholics have the same thing going, where it's just people are going to have strong opinions. So please continue.
No, yeah. Well, I'm going to tie it to the family dynamic.
Okay.
And I think because it was the ascendant power in the 2000s online, and so it's kind of the parent. It's like the previous generational hegemonic power as far as our online internet spaces go for discussing God from an Anglo perspective, I guess, Christian perspective. So it's the parent structure that you got to rebel against. And folks did rebel, and it's fine, but but at some point you have to reconcile with your father. You can't look in the mirror every morning as you grow more into your father's image and hate your father. You're just hating yourself, and you're hating God. And so I think people are doing that with Calvinism. They're like, I don't have to agree with Calvinism. I don't hate it when I did used to hate it. And which is another way of saying I don't hate propositions. I don't hate how the internet used to be. I don't hate Christian YouTube per se, even though we're not making that kind of content. Do you know what I mean? Like there's some kind of reconciliation kind of thing happening where people can just agree to disagree on that particular thing that reminds them of their authoritarian father, I think, which is really good, really healthy.
Right. Yeah. I think, part of it, like in TLC specifically, I think part of it is that a lot of the notable operators, right, were coming out of a disillusioned Reformed background. So, and also that makes sense, right? So it's like, if you're coming out of a disillusioned Reformed background, and then you have this interesting Reformed pastor who's kind of like really hard to pen in the way that Paul is, and that you can identify with, and it kind of like, I actually think it's interesting because it's like, if they weren't trying to rescue something of the father there, then why would they keep following PBK? So I think at some level, they're still trying to maintain a connection to what they came out of. I mean, Luke is let's say, is like the best example of this, because right, like, and there's like Luke is like, and I think Luke will get there. I think Luke will get to where he wants to get, because Luke is very, very fundamentally still very Protestant in his orientation. I think he knows that. I'm not saying anything that he would deny, but he keeps, he keeps hanging around these spaces and is close, and it's close to PBK for a reason. And I'm not saying that means that he's gonna become Reformed again. I think what it means is that he's going to find a way in which he's going to find the parts of what what drew him to that in the first place that were really true,
Mhm.
and that are really still like there in him. He's gonna become comfortable with saying like, okay, this is still true. And this is kind of like this. I've been going through the same thing, except for my case, my upbringing was Pentecostal.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, oh, and so I've been like many times over again, like I keep getting like brought into this place of like having to like be confronted with like what was good in that tradition that I was raised in, that I had rejected entirely, and that is worth preserving. And it's like, yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing Chris Green again, so I can talk to. Like every time I talk to Chris, I always thought, because Chris and I have that shared Pentecostal background, we always talk about that. And Chris has it's amazing. It's funny because Chris has such an amazing ability to reach people who came out of that kind of tradition with like really deep theological ideas that you would think that would challenge them like in a deep way that they would not be inclined to entertain for a moment, but he's able to get them to listen, because he knows how to talk to them. You know, he speaks their language. So
Do you think Vervaeke, how far is he on that trajectory of that kind of familiar, like reconciling with?
I think like Vervaeke feels to me like where I was in 2015, and I think like John and I are a lot alike.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to land somewhere. I think he's going to land somewhere in a traditional church would be my guess.
Wow.
But I think in the process of doing that, I think like I know his upbringing was fundamentalist. I don't know how much of it was charismatic. I think he'll find, once he does that, I think he'll find something that like fits his more intellectual bent better. But I think that he will maybe come to peace with some of the overlapping shared mystical aspects that just takes that is in a different form, and wherever he lands, I don't know. But I don't like. He doesn't seem to me like someone who's going to be on the outside looking in for very long. He's, I think,
getting closer.
I don't remember what was. I was watching that new guy Adam's Fall, the guy that's returned to his LDS roots via PBK, but he was playing a clip from some conversation where Vicky was talking about Hermes told him that he's on a dark path back to Christianity right now. They're like, wow, that's pretty interesting, like, nugget to get there. But yeah, definitely interesting to see.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, I think the only thing I could add is I think that once you reconcile with your father in this symbolic way that we're discussing it, the next thing that's going to happen is going to be you're going to have a lot more foresight to look into to gaze into the future and to start to name and predict things and to advise better about the coming things. And I think that's probably where TLC is going. Once these things are shifting and sifting and kind of sorting into pleasing, amicable relationships, as they seem to be doing in this quarter, like the only thing that can happen after that is it's going to propel. We're going to be able to project it forward, I think, and we're going to start to, I don't know, engage with the world as it is, the world as it will be, in a lot better way, I think, which is going to be really fascinating. And show people how to reconcile with their dads, too. We're going to be able to share that. Because these kids are going to need it. You can't, I mean, Nate and I, we talked about this. Like, it's admirable what a lot of folks are doing, at least in these online microcosms. They're desperate, they're hungry, and they're finding food, but Russian folktales isn't enough. And the people that we admire say that it's not enough.
Yeah.
But I think these kids have to learn that the hard way. There's going to be corners of the internet like this one that can help them navigate that.
Yeah. There's my friend Evgeny Terekin, who's been doing the fairy story series with Sherry mostly. I've only made it to a couple of the episodes because I was busy because my daughter just got married and had other stuff going on. But he wrote a thing today on his Substack that was really interesting, and he was talking about anathesis, I believe is the word. It's basically like the idea, like the theme was like finding God after the death of God, and it was about the way that people, like, oftentimes, like, even after they've gone through a deconstruction, in their continued search for beauty and truth, like they find God again in the ashes. Which for a God that dies on a cross and resurrects, like, what could be more appropriate than that? So it's like, it was really good piece. And I was thinking of a while ago. I went back and read some of the poems that I wrote during my agnostic phase, and it's like, yeah, that's like, it's pretty clear, like, that's what was going on. I was still looking for God in the ashes. So,
yeah.
I sent that to Luke because I thought it was totally Luke's kind of thing. He'll love that piece. It's not very long either.
He's gonna catch this on the replay.
2-minute read.
It's funny, when I was in Washington, there was the whole Jordan Peterson versus 20 atheists thing happening. And I remember thinking, why, like, I don't get why we're surprised that atheists and Christians and everything in between and outside of it are acting similarly.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're really talking about a world in which we're talking about God's universe. So Jordan Peterson doesn't have, like, whether you're looking for God in the, like, wherever you're looking for God, you know what I mean? And we as the subject of our own perspective are always going to be acting in that way because we're made to do that. So like, positioning yourself to be Christian or positioning yourself to be atheist it's not going to change that. It's not going to change your nature or his, So of course Jordan Peterson is going to act the way he does. And I think he's cognizant of that. And it's really, it's tragic that, like, some old 2000s era, debate style programming showed up on our feed. Like, it became popular for a minute. I don't know why that's popular, because I thought we were done with it. But like, we understand that, like, that's not how you reason through these things. Is which camp are you putting yourself in?
Well, you can't. Here's the problem. Okay, here's the problem with debate. There's no problem. There's no problem with reasoned argument at all. That is not the problem with debate.
Yeah.
The problem with debate is that debate is basically an academic game, and its goal is to win.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not, by its nature, designed as a tool to pursue truth. That's just not what it's. That's not what it. It's never been its function.
Yeah.
And there's no real communication that goes on in a debate. And what we want, what we're looking for, what we're seeking is actual opportunities for communication. Which doesn't mean that there's no reason to argument, that people don't have positions, that there's no wrestling back and forth between conflicting views. Like that can all still happen. But it's not in, but it can't be in service of this concept of debate. It has to be in service of a genuine attempt to communicate. And the primary thing that requires is that it's the old Jordan Peterson thing about like that he used to say, where he says, which he did not display very much in that debate video, right? Where when you sit down to talk with someone, assume there's something that you can learn. That's the only thing that you need to make all the difference. If you go into a conversation with someone, regardless of how far apart your positions are, if you, one, treat them with a basic level of respect and dignity, and two, assume that there is something that you can learn, then there's no losing, right?
Yeah.
There's no losing, and everyone wins in that there's no losing, because what you're creating the opportunity for is for the possibility of real communication.
Then the part is as great as the whole. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely interesting to see how like the whole like Christian YouTube sphere is way shifting further away from the whole debate model and the polemics, and like so many more people are doing the let's have a conversation with somebody from another denomination. And there is like the how far disconnected are you willing to have a conversation with someone? There's a limit for some of these, but it's like even the people that I would have thought are more like conservative or suspicious are making some effort to reach out, and just the way that you can't deceive people in this public way. Like, I don't know if you saw the other one. I didn't necessarily watch the whole thing, but Rationality Rules made a video about Tom Holland, and then Glenn Scrivener did a video on it and showed he didn't actually read the book, and he had pulled a quote from Wikipedia. So then the Rationality Rule guys took his video down. He apologized for it and said this was a mistake, somebody that was helping me with research to do it right. And so then Glenn does another video where he then shows some examples of other people that have called him out for mistakes that he made in his study or whatever. So and it's just this willingness for people to be transparent. It's just the nature of the algorithm is sort of forcing people to do it, because you can't lie. Your audience will not stay with you. So people are kind of forced to, but it's good that Christians see that and lean into it first, because we should be the first to be willing to admit our mistakes. And that's, it's a very interesting way that the atmospheres are changing, not even just in our little corner. It is the same patterns are emerging in other places.
So I want to acknowledge this comment here. I don't know who you are.
Oh no.
But yeah, I mean, yes, what I'm talking about is what people ought to do. And I am a human being. I am a sinner. I do not always do what I ought to do. I don't think I consistently fail to do it, though. I think the people I'm sharing this screen with right now, I think it can definitely testify that I don't always fail to do it. Do I sometimes fail to do it? Sure, I'm human. I sometimes fail to do it. As do we all. And I mean, Jordan failed to do it in that that silly debate video that we were all talking about. And even though I was quoting him in terms of the concept of like how not to behave. So we just have to. Yep, I screw up sometimes. So does Jordan. So do we all. It doesn't change that with the standard. What the standard is, just because people fall short of it. So
Yeah.
In fact, I'm gonna joke about myself a little bit more. I was really mad about something about a vote in our fantasy football league because we had already like passed a vote. We'd already had our rule changes vote, and we had a unanimous vote on. So I'm the one who brought up the potential. It's a league that has IDP, individual defensive players, and we've always throughout the history of the league we've always allowed defensive players, if they score a touchdown on offense, we've always scored it. And I brought it up to the commissioner that we might want to vote whether we wanted to change that rule or not, because of the possibility of Travis Hunter actually playing a significant number of snaps on offense compared to like the occasional JJ Watt touchdown catch in 2014, right? So it's potentially like it changes the game balance. And so we thought, I suggested we have a vote on it. We had a vote on it, and we voted to score it the way we always did. And then after the vote unanimously passed to continue to score it the way we always did, and after all the rule changes voting was closed, then he introduced a new proposal that would have made it like, oh, okay. And the rule only referred to Travis Hunter and not to anybody else, right? We were literally making a rule that referred to one player and one player only, saying, yeah, okay, he can score for both defense and offense, but you have to start him at wide receiver and at cornerback in order to do that. And that vote looked like it was going to carry. And it's like, I had left my phone at church, so I was late to respond. But when I did respond, it was like a diatribe about how this wasn't even a legal vote. And he gave in. He gave in and said we would debate it at the draft. And my one of my oldest friends in the whole world, I called him and I was complaining about this, and he was on the same page with me. He agreed with me, and he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "Your argument is great," and it's like you have the logic, and it's like. Just don't go in there and go into your full debater mode and go scorched earth and make everybody so mad that they just vote against you because they hate you. Right. So it's like, yeah, I have this tendency to, especially when I get really pissed about something, to just go full aggro and just destroy whatever I think is whatever position I think is ludicrous with facts and logic and no mercy. And I'm good at it. But here's the thing though. This is like Luke's thing. You could be right and be wrong and be wrong and be right. That's what he's talking about. Like, that's what my friend was observing. He's like, yes, you'll be right. You'll have the arguments lined up, and people will even see that your argument is right, but they will so resent the way that you did it that they'll vote against you anyway. So.
Yeah. If only you were less aggro, you'd win more, which is what you want to do by being aggro. Uh-huh. Wow, did we exhaust it? Sartori, you're not going to be streaming this afternoon, even with your wife being out after this one.
The Bible study that I normally join is going to start at noon, so I'll probably be on here. see when I get home. And it was also, well, maybe I should go home and read your comment. Is it appropriate for 7-year-olds?
Oh yeah. No, it's all ages.
My daughter.
I love
asked
your
about it.
feedback.
She was like, "Can I read this?" I'm like, "I don't know. I feel like I should read it first, but if you say it's okay, maybe I'll just she can read it and tell me about it, and then I'll catch up."
It's aged up a little beyond Tintin, but
chapter.
Tintin, when you go back and read it, is pretty elementary, you know.
Well, yeah, my daughter insisted she couldn't read for like a really long time, even though she obviously more or less knew how to. And now she's accepted that she can read. She's reading like at a very high level for her age. So, and by nature of just books that are of a higher reading comprehension level, the content is also more complex. So, you say it's good, it's good. But I still want to read it.
And I'm going to go ahead. Is your book? Do you link it? Is it on your X account? Is that?
Yeah, I think it's there.
Okay. I hate that I have to buy it on an online store. I can't just take it out of your hands in Chicago. But
yeah, well,
that's what life is.
Well, yeah.
All right, now I'm actually going to go try and be a little productive. Thanks so much, guys, for the basic conversation.
Yeah. I'm glad I hopped on. I'm working this whole time too. That's why my eyes are up, because I've got the monitors actually above my head while my work screen's down here.
Yeah, half of this I was lettering Pajot's book, trying to figure out weird sound effects things. Like, what does hissing of a snake sound like versus hissing of like branding flesh with a hot poker? There's two different hisses. How do you do sound effects for that? So
yeah, that's I have no idea.
All right, see you guys.
Yep, see ya.
Hey Matt, I got a suggestion, Matt.
Oh, he just left. You missed it.
Am I lagging?
Little tiny bit. I can hear you though.
I think I'm lagging.
You appear to be lagging a little bit. Yeah, Sherry.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to jump out and jump back in. How do I get out of here? Oh, there. Oh, no, I can't. I don't want to end the stream.
No. What started? I missed the very beginning of what started this stream anyway.
Luke was telling us how to leave good YouTube comments.
Oh, really? When did Luke become the arbiter of good YouTube comments? Did I miss a memo?
You're supposed to leave timestamps and lots of them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
that's yeah.
That's
it is. Yeah, it is really hard especially when people like. Okay, yeah, that's basically right. If you expect the person who made the video to interact with your comment in any meaningful way, please leave a timestamp, because we do not photographically remember what part of the conversation that you're possibly talking about, and we are not mind readers. So if you provide a timestamp, then we can go to the part of the video that you're referencing and figure out what you're talking about. So yeah, that's basically right. Yeah.
I try to figure out a way to leave a comment that fits the gist of the video so that it's understandable.
A lot of people, like I think Luke and I have tendency to do the same thing. which sometimes leads to comments that are completely unnecessary and stupid because the thing that you're anticipating gets addressed later on in the video. But tend to leave like running commentary as you're watching. I know Luke does that because I've seen his comments, and I know I do it too. So it's like,
well, I guess that's the thing. I always feel like I should wait until the end of the video, and so I know I fully understand like the video. But sometimes you can just affirm something that is well said, and
yeah. Wonder if Sherry's going to get back on or not. Was there a particular bad comment that like made him motivated to say that, or?
I don't know. You said like you made a little community post saying that he was thinking about doing that. So I don't know if it was a particular one or it was just something he had been. I think he was saying, more or less like, let's purposefully. Maybe this could be interpreted as like the application of technique, but to purposefully craft our communication, even in the comments section, for I guess to just improve the communication more. So.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the wedding.
Yeah, it was great. It was really good. Hey, Sherry's back. Hey, Sherry.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm on the desk.
Yeah, you seem better on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm on the desk. I'm on the desktop now because
my
iPad is old and cranky.
I gotcha.
Like me. Can you hear me okay with the earbuds in?
Yeah, you sound great.
Yeah. So I just thought I'd come and say hi because I'm working too.
Yeah, I can see that. Everybody's working.
Everybody's working.
What you're doing looks more fun than what I'm doing.
Well, it's a little frustrating at the moment because I've been gardening and my hands are like sandpaper. And so I'm like armed with like 6 different kinds of hand cream that I have to keep putting on because this is sticking to me. I'm trying to spin it.
How are things on the farm, Sherry?
Really good. Did
Excellent.
I tell you that I set myself up a tent back at the lake? It's been my monastic retreat.
No, that's cool though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been really beautiful. I got a single mom with 13 kids living next door.
Oh, wow. 13? Wow.
Yeah, it's a duck. It's a duck.
It's a duck. Gotcha. Love it.
She's a single mom with 13 kids.
Yeah.
I did.
You set me up. I bought it.
Well, it's not untrue.
No, it's not untrue. Did you see Eugene's Substack this morning?
I saw it, but I didn't read it.
It's really short. You should check it out. It's really good. It's a good one. I shared it around.
Oh, cool. Yeah, his Substack is so good.
It's very good.
It's just the right length, and you know what? I'm just in awe of the guy because he can put one out there every day.
Yeah, and he always has something really insightful to say. Yeah.
Really insightful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
my sister. That's what my sister is a writer. My sister Elizabeth, and
Yeah,
she
that's right. Yeah, I remember.
back in April, she was asking what I wanted for my birthday. She said she decided that she was going to buy me a Substack subscription for my birthday, and she asked if there was. And Eugene's is the one. That's like, if someone was going to buy me a Substack subscription, that's who I wanted the money to go to. So, because I do read it on the regular. So,
Speaking of Substack people, did you read Michael Martin's Hermeticism for Dummies?
I did not read his Substack piece, but I saw his. I watched his YouTube video that he recorded on it.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, it's like, it's interesting. So the one guy. Well, first two things. It's like, it's really weird. It's like, it's really weird for the whole dynamic with him and Kings North is really weird, because I feel like if they got to know each other, they'd really get along.
Totally.
I mean, I'm just convinced of that, right? And I think that I think there's a lot of things that are just kind of stupid misunderstandings that, like, I gave it an effort. I actually like pitched the idea of getting, because Addison Hodges Hart kind of like jumped in on Paul Kingsnorth's side in this dispute. And I actually had a long back and forth with Addison over direct message, kind of like defending Tomberg, which is funny because Addison had just like a few weeks prior written a very favorable piece about Tomberg, but basically Kingsnorth like gave him permission to like trust his disgust sensibilities.
Yes.
Right? And so Kingsnorth gave him permission to lean into his disgust, so he kind of wanted to back away from what he had said about Tomberg in the first place, which I think was right. And I was like trying to think, I'm like, this seems to me like we should just all have a conversation together, Paul, Michael, Addison, myself, and we can sort this, I think, because I don't think what's being reacted to. And Michael, essentially, this is what Michael said in his video, at least. And I'm assuming he probably said something similar in the Substack. Essentially, the articles that came out, like attacking Sebastian Morello's book and attacking him as a heterodox thinker, fundamentally do not understand what Tomberg is talking about.
Right.
At all, like they really don't.
Well, yeah.
And they clearly don't understand. They're conflating what Tomberg is talking about with sorcery, and they're not understanding. They are not understanding the legitimate way in which we can talk about Christian theurgy. Although there are certain Orthodox that are very allergic to the concept of theurgy too. I know that Vervaeke, in his most recent conversation with Sebastian, had said that that bishop, or is it a bishop? But the Maximus, that Orthodox guy that's his friend that he's been talking to for a while now, he doesn't like using the term theurgy. But I think he's wrong. I think Milbank is probably the theologian who best makes the case for a proper Christian understanding of theurgy. It's nothing to do with sorcery or black magic or anything that's condemned in the scriptures. It's a complete misunderstanding of what's going on. And yeah, it's really weird. Now, what's interesting to me, though, particularly interesting to me, is that I think it was Hall was the name of the guy who wrote the first article that was a takedown of Sebastian Morello.
Mm-hmm.
the first few paragraphs of his article, where he talks about the danger of an antichrist movement from within the so-called Christian right, I wholeheartedly agree with and talk about all the time. And then I was completely stunned by him then turning his sights on Sebastian Morello's interest in Thunberg as like the thing to be concerned about. And it's like, no. So like those first few paragraphs the first couple paragraphs you wrote, it's like, I'm on board with you. I see this as a problem too. It's like, but wait a minute, why is this the thing you picked out to warn about in association with that?
Yeah, this is why people are so confusing, because you never know. I think people move out of their own experiences. That's what's motivating Paul Kingsnorth. He came out of, Wiccan, right?
Yeah.
I didn't read. I don't have Twitter, so I don't know what they were saying to each other. But I can imagine it. There's nothing new under the sun. And so everybody speaks from their personal experiences, and even Michael Martin is,
Sure.
So you never know. Is what I was going to say is, you never really know where a person's going to go with their final conclusions about a thing, because
Right.
and this is why social experiments don't work, right? Because wherever they veer off from the consensus, that's that deciding moment, that intersection where they have to choose which direction they're going to go, in order to bypass their own experience and the feelings they have about stuff, they have to have like a shitload of courage. Let me just say it that way.
Yeah.
Right? They got to go into the unknown, right? They got to go into something that they haven't yet encountered. And
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And Thunberg talks about this with Teilhard de Chardin. He talks about him being able to go in and out of the occult sciences through Christ, which is that passage from John 10:9 that says, I am the door, and it is through me that the sheep go in and out and find pasture, which is what Thunberg defines as, and Jesus is defining as, freedom.
Yes.
So, yeah, anyway.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, yeah, because that's really at the end of the day, and it's the funny thing is like Addison, he did get it, because in his piece, he was like, what Thunberg refers to as divine magic, in the final analysis turns out to be nothing other than creativity and love. And that's right. So it's like, if you understood Thunberg to ultimately be talking about creativity and love, then why would you pile on with Kingsnorth to question whether people should read him? So Thunberg seems to be, I don't know, but all of a sudden Thunberg's having a moment, because Vervaeke just had Sebastian Morello on for a second conversation, and there's all these, like, this hit piece against him, and then the piece that, like, critique Michael, and so there's much more. It seems like no one noticed it for a long time, and so I don't know if it's because I don't know why it's maybe Vervaeke. Maybe Vervaeke's talking about it has raised the profile. I'm not quite sure, like, why now.
I mean, there's a reason Thunberg wrote his book anonymously.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a polarizing book, right? Where you're just going to have knee-jerk reactions to some of the language, like magic.
Part of the reason that he wrote it anonymously is connected to the same reason why he addressed the letters all to unknown friend. I think that he, by being like because he himself wanted to write it in the guise of himself, of being also an unknown friend, right? It's an unknown friend writing to an unknown friend, reaching out in friendship. Like, that's why he wrote it anonymously. And the reason he wrote it that way is because it's not okay, first of all, it is not for everyone.
No.
It is definitely not a book that I would say everyone should read this book. Because it's definitely not for everyone. But for people who have an interest in for people who have ever had an interest in like occult spirituality or mysticism or anything on the fringes, what the thing is a deeply pastoral attempt to speak to those people in a language that they will understand, to bring them within the Catholic fold. That's what it is. Okay. And which is why it's so, if like, Roger Buck, the Tomberg.
Yeah.
The Tomberg guy.
I don't really watch his content, but yeah.
Right.
I know of him.
Well, but that's kind of like that's Roger and his wife, like that's their art, right? They come out of the New Age kind of spirituality. And Tomberg brought them out of New Age spirituality and into Catholic faith. And like one of the things that Michael talked about in his video this morning is that, like, Robert Powell himself, the guy who translated Meditations on the Tarot into English, he was an anthroposophist, and he became Catholic while translating the work as a result of translating Tomberg's work.
Right.
So I think Catholics in particular should really, really not have any hesitation in embracing this as like a deeply Catholic work within the Catholic mystic tradition, because that's what it is. It's completely orthodox. It's not a heterodox book. It just isn't. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a whole world out there that a lot of people aren't aware of. Like you said, this is not directed at everyone, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
I haven't asked you yet, Sherry, but I'm planning on doing a class in the fall.
Yeah.
For members. Are you interested in doing that with me?
Yeah, I would love to. I'd like to go through it again.
Okay.
When I went through it the first time, I had no clue. I was kind of like that person at the crossroads who gathered up a shitload of courage and didn't veer off when I first did it with you.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I didn't really. Yeah, it was nice to have Michael there, who had that actually taught the book before. My experience was, whereas this has been my whole life, was my experience because and the reason is that I have a hermetic kind of mind. Like, that's just like I am a the kind of person who like is a synthesizer by nature.
Mm.
I'm actually not very good at the kind of like deep digging, super hot, super deep analysis kind of stuff. That's not really my thing. I'm better at like just we've been talking about the fairy stories, right? The cauldron. My mind has always been like kind of a cauldron where I just collect all kinds of things from all kinds of sources, and I'm not particularly discerning about what sources I collect, right? Because I'll find like even if it's a source that's maybe I wouldn't even recommend as a good source to anyone else, I'll still find something that was in it that was good that I'll throw into that cauldron. And then I will kind of like, I'll synthesize the different ingredients that I brought into the cauldron into something. Like that's what I do. And that I think is essentially what Hermeticism is doing. Like that's the Hermetic path. And which is why it's not science or theology, really. Although it has elements of both science and theology.
I know what a hermeticist is. A hermeticist is the Homer Simpson meme where he backs into the bushes. That's a hermeticist. He's kind of the main thing of the show, but nobody really knows it. He's synthesizing in such a way that he does what a lot of women do. He makes people think it's their own ideas.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And,
but here's the thing though, that's the thing. That's how people actually get transformed by things. They have to, like, you can't, no one can allow something to come in and transform them unless you, and the other thing is too, is it can't be a bullshit mind trick either. You have to really show them how it is theirs all along, and they can take ownership of it.
Well, George MacDonald talks about it in terms of if an artist has to write "this is a horse" under his painting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
we got a problem.
He's like, the artist is not teaching zoology, right? So George MacDonald is not interested in giving you the meaning of his fairy tales. His interest lies in waking something up in you.
Right.
And that's a hermetic move, right?
Yes.
So. And because what is like, and you can, it's actually in the image of the hermit too, right? Because the hermit, he has the lamp and the walking stick, and he's like he's reaching before him, and he's shining the lamp, and the traditional idea is that what the hermit is seeking is the logos. Like that's what the hermit's looking for. Mm-hmm.
But there's that. But the thing is like, well, yeah, but of course, because there's nothing else isn't anything else real to look for. You just have to find where it's manifesting.
That's when people like the conservative impulse to be afraid and call out of like these subversions that people do of stories and stuff, when like ultimately the subversion only can go so far before you like more or less hit the corner and you end up pointing back to like the real thing.
Yep.
like that's the whole thing with like the objective room in that hideous strength. Like it's either like, well, is it if it's arbitrary, then why just not spit on the cross? You know, like
Right,
that,
right,
you know,
right. Yes.
which is kind of funny because like now the people are getting up in arms with the whole you know, they're doing Narnia again, and they're going to make Aslan a woman, or
Yeah, they're gonna have a woman do Aslan, voice Aslan. Yeah.
like, you know what? Here's the thing: it either will work or it won't work. It might not work, but if it doesn't work, you're going to get a bunch of women that would never be interested in C.S. Lewis watch it because it's like they did the gender swap, and then they either will, if they like it, they'll be more interested in the books, and then maybe after they read the books, they might say it was wrong that they switched the genders, but like they just never would have cared anyway. So like it's just the
Right.
people that are like, don't change my sacred, you know, my sacred childhood memory or whatever. Like it's
I don't entirely agree with that, because Aslan is a male lion. He has a mane. Okay.
yeah.
I don't know how.
Well,
so I don't know if he's
well,
going to be a lion.
that's-
Let me just finish though. I don't know if he's going to be a lioness. But if he's,
I
if
don't
he's
know
a
either.
male lion with a mane and he has a woman's voice, there's a George MacDonald talks about in his fantastic imagination. He talks about the law of the story, right? So stories fall into a world of natural law that cannot be broken, and when that law gets broken by the storyteller, you fall out of the story. So, you know, I think we're so used to advertising, we're so used to that kind of magic, that we think it's okay to wave that wand to attract people, to lure, to conjure, right, people into something. But there is a sacred law when it comes to these stories that has to be upheld. Otherwise, the story has it, and we'll see what people think, you know. But I'm gonna guess that they're gonna fall out of that story if they change too much of the natural law of the story, right? Like he says, when you create a world, that world has its own laws, and you have to uphold those laws, right? The cosmological environment of the world that you create. So, and I think this is why a lot of modern art and modern story fails for people, falls flat. We call it nihilistic, right? That's the sense that we have from a lot of that stuff. It doesn't, there's no real meaning there.
Yeah. Well, that's what
Anyway,
like
those are my thoughts.
Well, yeah, I mean, because, and I even thought, well, if it's, it could be interesting maybe if they still make him a male lion, but he has a female voice, that's, causes you to maybe contemplate something, because it's like we all receive masculine traits from our father and feminine traits from our mother, and each parent has both masculine and feminine traits that they get from their father and mother, and it's not the that's not maleness or whatever isn't mean pure masculinity or something. And obviously, Jesus talks about being the hen that wants to gather the chicks. He's referring to himself as a hen. That's
here's the thing: it's judging it before we've seen it, and we don't know. It could be disastrous.
Yeah,
but to your point, Michael, it could actually be reinforcing something that Lewis himself is driving home all the time, is that the idea of masculine and feminine are cosmic principles that have nothing to do with being biologically male or biologically female. Lewis is unambiguously clear about that. Yeah. To him, masculinity and femininity, and not only that, in that hideous strength, he says that there are there are 5 other genders that we don't even have categories for that are cosmic genders.
Yeah.
So the idea of having a woman voice Aslan is going to give a sense of strangeness to it that might possibly, depending on how it's executed, help to kind of communicate what Lewis himself was trying to say about gender. Also, if you look at portray it also points to how this is something more than human, right? And more than a lion. And it could just be we don't know. Wait a minute, let me finish. We don't know that it's just a straight gender inversion pattern when we haven't even seen the film yet. So judging the film in advance and deciding that's going to be trash when we haven't seen how the director and the rest of the artists who are involved in the film are actually going to execute their vision, like just deciding in advance. And I think by the way, I also think it's already been decided in advance. So no matter how good it is, people are going to trash it because of their political hobby horses.
Yeah.
Well,
I was actually going to say, like,
I didn't say I was.
It doesn't have much of an influence if it's not good. But even still, even if it's not good, like people that don't have prior attachment, like kids watch stuff with such a more open mind. You know, it's like all the people that loved Star Wars thought the prequels were terrible, but the kids that was like their first experience, they just liked it regardless. And so it's like some kids, boy or girl or whatever, is going to be exposed to this, and they might love it. And what they love about it will be the good C.S. Lewis, Jesus DNA that's in the story, regardless of whatever changes they make to it.
Well, it's not like the previous film editions are particularly high bars either.
I just watched some of those with the kids. I liked it more than I thought. The John Freder one. It was like they changed stuff, but I was like, yeah, it's still I think it still works as a movie. But I like the old the BBC ones with the people in the like fur suits.
Right.
But yeah, you can't corrupt. You can try, but it backfires when you try to like twist stuff. There's a limit to how much damage you do, and it ultimately ends up backfiring and reinforcing the truth. That's it.
I think that's true.
I was going to say earlier that Lewis may have had some ideas about the divine feminine and the divine masculine, but he still gendered Aslan as a male. And and if that's the story that he put it in, then there is a natural law to that story. And my point isn't, I'm not trashing the movie, but I'm just saying that there is a principle at work that if you break the laws of the story,
but
you fall out of the story.
Right, but the thing is that you don't know what the laws of the story are yet because you haven't seen it.
No, but I know what the laws of the story are that Lewis wrote.
Right, but then there's the thing that's like, yes, but that's the story that Lewis wrote. And this is another thing that's important here. We have to understand what a good film adaptation is doing, right? A good film adaptation is automatically, first of all, it has to have its own viewpoint and its own vision, or it's going to be trash. You cannot just reproduce.
But it doesn't if it's ripping on somebody else's story. It can't be original.
It
can't have its own viewpoint, right?
Well, but we've been
interested-
riffing. We've been writing our own riffs on the same story for a long time. I don't know what you're talking about.
No,
I actually-
no, I mean,
I actually wrote a chapter
that's a pretty
about
universal.
adaptations in my book.
Yeah.
About what?
To me,
About
I mean, Philip K. Dick is writing an original story, right?
Right.
So, C.S. Lewis is writing one, and so is George MacDonald, and so is Tolkien, and and if you want to do a story that tells that story your own way, then I would suggest you write a new one. That's what I would do.
That's not. But it's actually an extension of if it's. Okay, what I'm saying is actually a natural extension of what MacDonald says about meaning in the imagination essay. And when artists are approaching a work, like if I write a poem that's a response to another poem, I'm not going to just reproduce that poem. I'm going to write another poem that was inspired by that poem and builds on that poem. A good film adaptation is doing the same thing because you're taking something that exists in a completely different art form, and you are doing your own interpretation of it and your vision of it. And it's not only is it not supposed to be a one-to-one copy of what the original work was, if it's going to be any good, it better not be. You better bring some fresh perspective to it, or we're all going to realize it's trash.
Yeah, well, stories, they're right. When you're writing a story, maybe this may be different for some people. Some people may think they have everything planned out, but inevitably, you discover some of the story as you're writing, and sometimes more of the story is discovered through its adaptations. I would say, so an interesting example was the Last of the Mohicans, the Daniel Day-Lewis one, is the best evolution of that story. That it was adapted 15 times or something, and and the original author had these things that he wanted to say, and then it kind of changed through various adaptations, and the story actually got better and better the more people tried to adapt it. For the sake of essentially making something that's compelling and people want to watch, and but I get it's tough with Lewis because it's a high bar to start with. So the better a story is to begin with, then the more difficult it is to adapt it.
Because the author didn't leave you much room to do the kind of expansion of it, because the work, the more deep and encompassing the work that you're trying to make a rendition of in another medium is, the less likely that effort is to succeed. Because for it to be any good, you have to bring out more than was in the original. Yeah. You actually, and which in film you ought to be able to do, because you actually have more of the senses to work with, right? It should be possible. And there are really, I'm not one of those people that thinks that the book is always better than the film. The book is always different from the film. It doesn't mean the book is always better than the film. Sometimes a film is made that brings out things that were implicit in a story that the author didn't do a very good job of forefronting, that were more important to their story than the author realized. I doubt that's going to happen with this. It's probably going to be trash, but we shouldn't decide in advance that it's going to be trash.
It's going
based on the fact that
it might be trash, but even if it is, I think it's still going to accomplish something good for the kingdom.
It always does, because the real is the real, and you can't make anything that doesn't participate. There's nothing that you can make that, even if it's bad, it still has to participate in the real in some way, or it couldn't exist at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go join the Bible study stream that I assume is happening now.
All right.
So
All right.
it was
Talk
good
to you later,
hang out.
Michael.
See
Yeah.
ya.
Well, I think I'm going to go too, Nate.
All righty. It's good to see you, Sherry.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
All right. Have a good one. Bye-bye. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream, folks. Bye-bye.